Today is Monday, December 18th, 2023. We are at the Diamond Head Beach Resort. All council members are present, including town manager, town attorney, town clerk. If we please rise, Councilor King, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
We'll do the invocation first.
Oh, we'll do that first. Invocation, yeah. Great.
Accept our thanks for this day with all its blessings and opportunities. Thank you for every seat that has been filled here today and for each mind and heart that fills the presence of this room, as well as those lives we will encounter afterward. We meet today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support to engage in meaningful discussion for our leaders as they render service to our fellow citizens and community. Ready us to make every moment count. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Next, we have the approval of the final agenda. We will be pulling item A, Resolution 23-184, and I believe the manager has something to add.
Yes, Mayor, Jeff Hauge informed me that FDOT needs a formal approval of the fireworks show on New Year's Eve, New Year's morning day. So if we could add that either under, I asked the attorney where she would rather have that, either under the consent or under the manager's items.
Yeah, I spoke with her. I think having it under the manager's items in case there's any questions. Perfect. Thank you.
And I'd like to pull B
All right. Pull B. Any other changes?
from the consent agenda.
Any other changes?
Mayor, just for a point of clarification, we're pulling the procedural rules just to fix some of the pagination issues.
Okay.
So that, and to show more clearly what all the changes were. So there's no real substantive issues. We just want to have a better document.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, Nancy.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Got a motion by Councilor King. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Woodson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next is public comment. Madam Clerk?
Well, I have them.
Yeah.
In a moment. First up is Dale and Jay Bonema.
Good
morning.
morning, Mr. Mayor,
Good morning.
Town Council, and staff. We need your help. We are a small island business. Hurricane Ian completely destroyed our 2 beach cottages. We had no insurance and received no FEMA assistance. We've had no rental income for a year and a half. Our home on Matanzas Court survived quite well, but it has a lot of scars. We do need to rent our remaining home from time to time to help cover the huge expense of ownership. The property tax bill this year for our 3 properties is $125,000. That represents over $25,000 to the fire district, $52,000 for the schools. That's $1,000 a week. So we do feel we contribute and we are a member of our community. But back to renting, the executives that rent our home, they're accustomed to a 5-star experience. It's right on the bay, but for the first time in 10 years, we'll not be able to provide a 5-star visit for our guests because we have a bar with the noisy music just 60 feet across the water from our property. And this is an assault on our property value. Have you ever experienced a loud party next door to your home? If you take that one night of annoyance and multiply it 5 or 6 days a week, 30 times 30 weeks, and you'll realize what we've been experiencing. The Rude Shrimp Company chose to move to Moss Marina. They misled the permit department. They were deceptive when they applied to the town to set up at that new location. They claimed to only want a restaurant, food truck, but very soon they applied for a full liquor license to become a bar. And so after all these months, why does it appear that the Fort Myers Beach town is making great efforts to accommodate the root shrimp? The zoning and code of ordinances in the town should be protecting the property rights of the over 50 residential properties within 500 feet of the root shrimp. Instead, we're forced to take this on while I'm fighting stage 4 neuroendocrine cancer. And obviously, we should have been at more council meetings in the past, but quite often my cancer treatments are out of state and they're near the first of the month and we can't be here. We first emailed all of you in June, and we posed the question if the zoning allowed for what was going on. And now 6 months later, we're still disturbed with the live music 5 or more days a week. On Sunday afternoon, we do not appreciate our family having to hear, woo, 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 God damn. That's what we hear. Some neighbors, they want to get an attorney and lawyer up. We don't think that needs to come to that. The code of coordinates is clear that bars are not allowed in commercial marine zoning. I think Sarah would agree with that. So why does this go on and on? Why is the root shrimp not issued a citation and daily fines? If we were to get 30 to 50 hogs on our property, raising pigs, I think we would be addressed quite quickly by the zoning violations.
Dale, I need you to wrap up your comments, your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it went off earlier. I'm sorry.
It did.
It did. Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry I went over the limit, but can you please help us? Because whether that music is 86 or 66 or 46 decibels, it's very distracting day after day, nonstop. And when you're trying to work,
Sorry.
it's terrible. So would you be able to conduct this meeting with this going on, this noise? It's hard day after day. Even inside our own home, we can hear it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We're going to proceed a little out of order. Andy, can you set up a meeting with them, with the root shrimp and our staff? If you're amenable to it,
Absolutely.
sit down and all of you discuss what's going on. And we've all seen the emails and try to get a resolution.
Yeah, we don't want to be here. We don't want to be here today doing this, but it just doesn't end.
Andy, you and Frankie, you guys can, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much
much.
for your time.
Wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Same to
thank
you
you.
as well.
Sarah Spector.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Spector on behalf of Prasad Properties. I'm here on the agenda item that is under the attorney's item, but I wanted to speak now in case you wanted me to present now as opposed to when the town attorney's item comes up.
I think it's best to do it when the town attorney item comes up.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah.
And Becky Weber.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. Well, on the positive side, it's a beautiful day. The sun is out and I overdressed because it's going to be much warmer out. But I believe that the little storm front that we had roll in over the weekend, I think many of us didn't sleep as the water rose and it got really ugly out. And what my item is and my issue is it something that has affected me on Curlew Street, but it's affected many, many other people throughout the island is the fact that the storm drains are broken. And the water is just shooting out of the storm drains. I have pictures, we had 2 feet of water on Curlew. I'm sure there are many streets that had as much, if not more. And I am requesting again, I had requested several weeks ago, if we could have a list listing all of our streets, because all of our residents that have this issue are concerned about it, of when, like a timeline for each street, when this is going to be resolved, what timeframes are we looking at? We now have people that are talking about, we just want to get off the island. We can't be flooded again. I would say that probably 50% of the homes on our street alone lost everything in their garages and basements again. Not basements, but first floors. So this is the third time first time is Ian. Ian is Ian, okay? But the storm drains during Adela and during this storm contributed to the flooding and the loss of property on many streets on the island. So please, could you commit to getting that document out so everyone on the island knows when their street's going to get done, and those storm drains will get fixed. So with the timeline on it and a contact person. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Becky. We'll have Frankie update that under the council member items, give an update as to where that's at.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in public comment? Yes, sir. Come on up. Hold on a
I'm
second.
on Curlew Street
Come on,
also.
Jim,
I've been coming
I just
before
need you to
Byers
get over
Beach
in the microphone.
since 1954 when I was 7 years old. So I've been down here a long time. My family's owned property here since 1964. My wife and I have owned different places since 1997. We moved on to Curlew Street several years ago, and I came down here for full time after working. What amazes me, and Andy, I hate to put you on the spot, but the last meeting I was at where you were speaking, there was a commitment made by yourself and others. We just want to get a list. In fact, Becky's asking for a timeline. I don't think you know what the timeline is going to be until you come down and look at all the streets. But who's first on the list, second, third, fourth? And what are you doing to get input from the community members? We got hit pretty hard at Ian. Took us a year to get back on our feet. The second one that came in here this last time, we'd had no damage, but we found out we got some flooding this last storm. And it's a sewer that backs up. And the thing is, the baffle's in my yard. Okay. But it doesn't work. A year and a half ago, you were out. The guys that did the work said, we're going to put in a new used one. It's broken, but we're going to put it in anyway because we know that the current one is not performing properly. The water gurgles up. When the bay is full, the water rushes in, but the baffle is stopped so that it won't go back out. So it's a very slow drain. This is a simple engineering problem, but I know it's bigger because it's the entire island. We'd just like to get, when will we get a list with what streets, by when? Some sort of baby talk characterization. A, B, C. A's are simple, B's are more complicated, and C's, we have no idea what we're doing here until we get in with boots on the ground. But this is nuts. We're selling because we want to get off the island. We're tired of the speed at which some things have been getting done. I listened to the last meeting. You're fixing the ballparks for kids that we don't have, 28 of them or whatever it is in the school system down here. You're talking about getting the beach gymnasium facilities fixed. You got houses here that are a mess. And until you get that sort of stuff fixed up on streets, buyers coming in here are going to look at that stuff and say, why would I want to move here? Out here, the beach? Probably. Maybe they're going to like that. But I think that's almost irresponsible that we're not getting some of the things that are done for just health, safety, and maintenance of the town. End of it. Thanks. But would like to get a follow-up, Andy, on that list. I mean, if we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Sorry, I didn't sign up for town comment, but I appreciate your time.
You gotta
And
state
I
your
want to,
name.
but,
State your name.
oh,
Sorry.
Linda Miller, I run the farmers markets downtown. And I want to thank you all because I think there's just not enough applause for town council and for public works and for the new management that you have, Andy Hyatt and Frankie. And also special thanks to Martin. They've done a great job cleaning up downtown and cleaning up the beaches. And that looks so much better out there than the last time I was here. And I just can't thank you enough because you guys have really done a great job. And I know we have other issues on the island and you all are getting to them and listening, but that's the main thing is that this council and this management team that you have is compassionate, thoughtful, intellectual. They think beyond one or two steps. They're not like, let me take care of this just to get it off my desk. It's more like, let's get down to one or two levels to make sure that problem doesn't come back. I just, been around a lot, been around management a lot, and these two are awesome. And Martin is awesome. And you guys are just doing a great job. I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Linda. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Next, we have local achievements and recognitions. Councilor Veach.
Oh, I get to go first. We want hats off to the chili cook-off. And as a personal note, I just have to say that I'm really pleased and honored to be living in a town where the mayor can dance around with a chicken head in a public event. It was great to see the island coming back with these events, and I appreciate the little dance there, Dan.
That's pretty presumptuous of you, but I'll take the compliment. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Councilor Woodson?
Well, unfortunately, I missed that. So sorry.
I'm sure there's a video somewhere.
I'm sure there is. I see that there is. No, unfortunately, I had to miss a lot of the festivities. I had to be out of town the past couple of weeks, but I'm so glad that the bike parade was moved to next weekend. So participate in that. But I want to thank the town. I saw all over Facebook for the cleanup on Sunday, Times Square, and I know it was a mess, as a lot of places were. And I do have such empathy, and I have friends that live in your area as well. So I think we need to look at these things, and I know our people will. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Well, I just want to dovetail on what Councilor Woodson said. It's not so much the act, but they have the town manager, the director of operations, Andy and Frankie, along with our department heads, Jason and Jeff and others from the town, out there early Sunday morning after a pretty severe storm, cleaning up the town, particularly on the north end there. And it's not the act, it's the attitude, it's the servant leadership that we're seeing. Again, we have a lot of challenges. We just voted on a contract to address some of these streets that are challenged. And I think the point about when and how and where is a fair one. And we need to get that information out. But I just want to commend the team, the staff. We had an office Christmas party last week for the town employees, and just the spirit and the esprit de corps, the morale, and particularly during a very tough time. I'm very thankful for the direction our town leadership is headed, particularly our town manager and town staff. And I just want to thank them and commend them and recognize them this morning. Thank you.
Councilor King?
It had been a great December up until this weekend with the beach school reopening, Margaritaville ribbon cutting, CVS reopening. But again, I'll echo what others had said over the weekend. We'll get it right. And I thank all the hardworking staff from the town manager on down, including Wheels, Frankie Wheels, Kopacek, and the other directors that were out there Sunday doing the hard work. Thank you.
Well, benefits of going last is a lot of things already covered. Well said, Vice Mayor Adderholt, Councilor King, and everyone else, with the staff being out there yesterday morning with shovels. And I think we got to work on Andy's tan a little bit. I saw one picture. I'd also like to recognize the Bay Oak staff. This weekend they had a sleepover for the kids at the Mound House, and Santa had made an appearance, and to see the amount of work, it's a small space, and to see the amount of work that that staff was putting in until 9 o'clock at night, showing movies and crafts, and they went really above and beyond, and they need to be recognized for that. So good job, Jeff, with you and your team making that happen. And then the Women's Club Chili Cook-Off, congratulations to Scott Allen and Kevin Clark for taking first place. And we promise that they will get that green jacket at some point. I'm going to hold it at the dry cleaner as long as possible. We did come in second, but it was, I believe it's because we ran out really early, which says everybody loved it. Thank you, Frankie, for coming out and making your chili. I'm sorry you took every bit of it home that you brought. Somebody's got to be last, and I appreciate you stepping up to the plate and doing that. So with that, we'll move on to advisory committee items, reports, and
So
appointments.
Is trash talking one of our agenda items? I just
Well, I recognize
No, it's called
him.
sore loser.
Under policies and procedures.
Someone's got to be second and last. It might as well be us. We've got Chair Jeff Taylor from the Audit Committee is here.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Taylor. I'm from the Audit Committee. Last week, December 11th, we met as an audit committee for the first time at the Mound House. Members of the Audit Committee are
See,
Deborah
Jeff?
Dutton.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you, first of all, good morning.
Yeah,
But
good morning.
you're our new chair of the audit committee, and I think this is the first time you're coming before the council. And could you share a little bit about yourself? And again, thank you for your service this morning.
So this is my first time doing this. So I'm a little stiff, but hopefully it'll loosen up here shortly. But my name is Jeff Taylor. I do live down on Curler Street with some other folks that were up here earlier, and we did see a lot of flooding down there. I'm been on Fort Myers Beach since 2019. We have a house that we live in full time. We've taken large part in the town activities. From, like you said, this December has been kind of fun in between the boat parade and the chili cook-off and everything else that's been going on. So, the chili cook-off's probably the first time, that and the boat parade, first time we started seeing like, hey, wait a minute, it's kind of starting to feel normal again. But myself, both myself and my wife used to work for a company called Deloitte Consulting. We were management consultants, and both of us have now retired from that. My background is primarily working with very large companies across the world, implementing ERP systems, which are the finance and accounting systems that run corporations. But right now, she and I are here full time. We have 4 children between us, and along with their spouses, and 4 grandchildren, 2 4-year-olds and 2 1.5-year-olds, who are pretty much demanding. So I think the retirement gig is going to be a lot of fun because I don't have to focus too much on work any longer, although I've got a whole new brand of work going forward. So that's a little bit about myself. But as I wanted to say, I mean, it's the audit committee is responsible for reviewing the work of the finance director and of the town, as well as reviewing the work of the auditors for the town and the financial results of the town each year. Members of the audit committee include Deborah Dutton, Marianne Sheely, Jack Lesson, Michael Hauser, Barbara Puffer, and Brian Thomas. I was nominated as chairman of the audit committee, and Jack Lesson was nominated as vice chairman during that meeting. During the meeting on the 11th, we heard from Joe Onzik, as well as who's the town finance director, as well as Wade Sansbury from Malden and Jenkins. They are the town auditors, about the final results of the 2022 audit, in which the town received a clean opinion. This was the results from September 30th, 2022. And as you can imagine, as with everything else, everything's had to be rebuilt. So Joe and his team in the finance department, as well as the auditors, have spent a great amount of time going through the ledgers, going through the sub ledgers, and being able to reconstruct the balances as of that point in time, and making sure that, you know, everything is in shape, everything has been recorded and properly represented. As a result, that's why they were able to get the clean opinion this past year. I think the finance team did a lot of work over the course of the past year, cleaning everything up. You guys have heard multiple notes about that in the past. But kind of going forward, there were 3 items that we wanted to bring to town council and put in front of you. The first is a motion to approve the final audit results that Malden and Jenkins have provided. The second is to authorize the town manager to execute an engagement letter with Malden and Jenkins to provide independent external audit services for fiscal year 2023. And the third is that the audit committee, along with Malden and Jenkins, would like to recommend that the town implement a record storage system to provide or to protect against the destruction of paper-based records in the event of a disaster like we saw with Hurricane Ian on September 28th. That was part of their audit findings during the audit committee meeting. We took that a couple of steps further and would like to make an additional recommendation that as part of that record retention system, that the town start an ERP software selection process that will support the town's finance and procurement functions along with that record storage.
So just a question. I assume that means digitizing all the records so
That is correct.
they're somewhere safe.
Yeah, so if you get an invoice from ABC Company, being able to take that, scan it, store it somewhere off-site in the cloud, and be able to go back and access it without having to call a vendor to say, can you send us an additional copy of that paper document?
And Jeff, was this if you could just go into what these ERP systems are a little bit more than what you said and how that works, as far as you said, you deal with a lot of large companies doing this. I'm not familiar with what these are, but just kind of use Vice Mayor's analogy, a 10,000 foot view of how that system is comprised and how it works, and
Sure.
who accesses it and how they can access it.
Well, there's varying degrees, everything from tier 1 to 3, tier 1 being SAPs and Oracles, tier 2s are probably more niche players, maybe designed for the town, municipalities, if you will, who deal with fund accounting, who deal with the grants and funds and the commitment accounting that goes along with that. What a typical ERP would have in it would be master data like suppliers, customers, employees, as well as any of your inventory accounts that you have for if you have stock supply of nuts and bolts, light bulbs and toilet paper that you have to take to Bay Oaks or you have to put into the town buildings. Also, taking that step further, it's the processes that would encompass anything from being able to have an employee submit a requisition to buy goods and services, have that requisition be able to go through and be approved by appropriate approvers in the hierarchy of management, be able to then create a purchase order from that requisition, have that purchase order sent to the vendor, have the vendor be able to respond with those goods and services, take receipt of that, be able to then make an invoice payment and record the invoice and then make a payment. So, I mean, that's a very large, broad view of what a general process would be within there. The system itself is responsible for recording those transactions and making sure those transactions are recorded in accordance with the proper accounting rules that the town defines within its ledger structure. That's one view of life. The other side of that might be receivables. And if you have receivables that you're collecting from your customers, whether that's in the mooring fields or that's rentals that you have, being able to establish a contract with those customers, have those customers be billed on a regular basis, have those bills be collected in the form of cash, have that cash deposited, and then be able to show up as a properly recorded accounting transaction. At the end of that, you have the general ledger structure that would allow you to be able to do both, periodic reporting, so monthly reporting of your financial positions, and then be able to collect that and produce a consolidated financial statement at the end of the year.
And I assume, Joe, I see you say, is this something that the finance department supports, having a system like this? You don't have to, he's nodding his head, yes. You don't have to worry about company.
Yeah. This was something that had been discussed in 2022 several times and is being brought forward again, and is one of, as Joe pointed out, is one of his management goals this year.
Okay. Any questions for Jeff?
Jeff, I have a question. It's a little bit outside the purview of the audit committee, although I would look forward to a day where it's not outside the purview of the audit committee. And that, do you get enough information from the town to make a general assessment as to how the town's doing financially? And just, we have a lot of smart people on the audit committee of a finance background. Do you have a sense of how the town's doing, and do you have a sense of how appropriate our strategic plan for recovery is? Can you get a general sense? Do you have a comfort about the information you've given your finance background and the audit committee's background, or do you not see enough?
Based on, so let me break that down into a couple of different pieces. Based on where the results were as of September 30th, 2022. It did not necessarily address the go forward at that particular point in time. It was how is the town structured at that point in time? How is the town performing? And how are the process and procedures that you're following in alignment? And, we felt at that particular point in time on the look back was appropriate. However, we have not discussed anything to do with looking forward, either on a financial position or on a, what are the projects that you're running and how are those being managed or anything. I think Joe and the finance department does have a plan as part of the goals that he'll talk about shortly, that looks at an overall portfolio management structure that, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but a portfolio management structure that would look at each project to determine its funding, its performance, its and how are you doing against the amount that you paid versus the work that you're getting out of it. That's one of the goals that he has. But I think as we go forward, we'll start to talk more about, where are you today and how does that look going forward?
I appreciate that. I would just say to the town manager, I don't know that we always fully utilize the audit committee. We've got really smart people. We have nothing to hide anymore. So we should utilize the audit committee to its fullest extent. And we welcome your input and your counsel, especially as independent outside observers who really care about the town. So thanks for your service.
Most definitely.
Any other questions for Jeff?
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Joe.
Next, we have the approval of minutes. You got the town council meeting from December 4th, 2023, and the management and planning session from December 7th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Counselor King. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda, the only item left on that is item B, the Moss Marina Farmers Market. That was pulled by Counselor Veach. Counselor Veach?
Yeah, I have some concerns. I know we're getting a lot of complaints about noise from Moss Marine. I think that particularly with some of the residences that are very exposed to them, I'm just not sure that adding additional alcohol sales there would be tolerable to the neighborhood.
Any comments? Vice Mayor Darrell?
Is Linda still here? I was going to say, I think they're just giving out small samples to sell, right? That's not like alcohol service, right?
There's kind of a couple of things about this. One,
Introduce your name.
pardon me,
Name,
Linda
please.
Miller.
Sorry.
Sorry. Rouge Shrimp right now is doing cocktail specials in their bar from 9 to 1 during our market hours to help promote us. But if you've been in there, it's very quiet. If you've come to the Moss Marina market, it's a very quiet market. I don't see any noise getting off.
But could you explain what actually happens? Are they just giving little tastes to sell the?
Okay, so our vendor, we have a vendor, it's a local craft vendor called Wicked Dolphin Distillery. And they want to sell bottles of rum. And in order to do that, they give small little tastes. That's one part of it. According to, I guess, Governor DeSantis this year, this is what I heard. There's a Florida statute 565.17, part of Title 34, that allows tastings of alcohol at farmers markets. But I think the little twist here is that council, because we're a permit, you get to decide whether or not to have that. So that's one aspect if we would do it that way. And the other aspect is if they would actually serve like with their alcohol, like a pina colada or a daiquiri.
But it's your understanding they're not serving drinks; they're just giving
Yeah.
tasting samples. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they're selling bottles of rum.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So you think you'd be okay with that? Or
We're still discussing.
okay, you
Thank-
done with me?
Yep. Thanks, Linda. I got a question for you, Nancy. What she had mentioned there is the tasting, but then you also said the sales. Is there anything in our code that prohibits the sale without a liquor license?
Generally, your special event permit will require compliance with any state required permits. And I think that the sale of alcohol would require a state permit as well.
Sure. Come on back up, Linda.
Wicked Dolphin has all the proper licenses to sell alcohol and to sample it.
In the state, but I don't know if that has anything to do with the local municipalities, does it?
I think it's within your special event permit requirement, the line item as far as will alcohol be served, and then you approve or disapprove for that particular event.
Now,
So they're complying with state law, but they also have local law that they have to comply with, and that's why this item is here before you today.
Just like if you guys had the Shrimp Fest event and you serve alcohol at the Shrimp Fest, you guys have to approve whether or not alcohol can be served or not. If that helps.
so Nancy, just a clarification, because I know there's different rules for like serving mixed drinks and serving packaged alcohol, right? Are those different licenses? Because my understanding with some of the liquor laws is they're tied to the property, not necessarily the business.
I don't know the answer to that specific question as far as what the liquor laws are. But the item before you today is for the sale at the farmer's market.
Which would be
And that
packaged
is
liquor
by
sales, right?
the 565.17. I think that's the correct statute that was cited.
So the Moss Marina also has the proper licenses to sell on their property. So we're covered under that as well. Because they have a beer shack.
Just to be clear, Linda, this is unrelated to Rude Shrimp, correct? This particular vendors and what they're doing.
Right. They would be participants in our market, which is not on the Rude Shrimp, within the Rude Shrimp fencing.
Another question I have, since you're up there, Linda, this is just specifically about that, but Is there a vision of trying to do the same thing with the Friday farmers market in Times Square with the same vendor? It's not on here, but I'm just asking a question for future.
In the future, yeah, that probably be a possibility. Currently, we don't have any openings there, but they have inquired to ask if they could do that.
Okay. Thanks, Linda.
And if you read the statute, it's kind of easy to pull up on your phone. But if you read that statute, it says that the vendor is responsible for making sure nobody underage is served and that no one is overserved, or else they lose those licenses that are so hard to get and expensive. Thank you.
Discussion? Councilor King?
None.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I think most of my questions have been answered, so I think I'm in a good place.
Okay. Councilor Woodson?
I'm good.
Okay.
I still have, a couple of potential issues with this. And one is we talked about, being overserved, but you're basically giving people the ability to serve themselves when they walk away with a bottle, even though I know there's some laws about that. And I am just a little concerned about with the pushback we're getting from some of the neighbors around Moss Marine to expand operations there. It seems like it's driving a bit of a wedge between the marina and some of the neighbors.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess I look at a farmer's market as a farmer's market, not necessarily a liquor store, but not that this would be a liquor store. And I know they've been in some other ones. I think they were involved in, maybe not them. I think it was Tito's or somebody else was involved when we were doing the stuff down at the Wyndham with the sculpting. I think they were down there for that. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the special event permit for Moss Marina Market to add this vendor for allow tasting and selling a package.
Second.
We had a motion by Councilor Woodson, seconded by Councilor King. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Here, motion carries 4-1. Councilor Veach dissenting. Next, we have public hearing, ordinance 20, ordinance, second, this is the second and final public hearing of an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, amending chapter 34, article 5, division 2, section 34-3238, post-disaster build back, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and an effective date. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Staff has been asked to provide language amending the post-disaster build-back regulations found in section 34-3238 to allow the square footage of a footprint, including the space that was unenclosed, such as garages, lanais, or storage areas, essentially allowing the same size building as previously existed, raised above the base flood elevation, and would not limit the usable space to only previously habitable space. The proposed change would allow the same number of units, the same number of bedrooms, and the same number of bathrooms, except the bathrooms could be increased to match the number of bedrooms. In discussions with a development that will have to change the layout of their cottages to meet the current code, they requested a change to allow powder rooms or half baths to exceed the number of bathrooms, so that they could have a half bath on a floor they didn't have a bedroom on. This is included in the code in front of you. For hotels and motels, the same allowance to use the entire area of the roof line, including hallways, parking areas, and storage areas that previously could not be included in the rebuilt units, has been applied. Additionally, the new language allows for the creation of additional rooms or fewer rooms as the space allows. The only limitation is that if the hotel is smaller than 50 units, it cannot use this language to increase above 50 units. Another option would be to, we removed that. Sorry.
Good catch.
The language was also amended to allow the director to reduce some of the requirements of open space, parking, landscaping, or buffer regulations through a written determination rather than requiring a full variance. At the LPA hearing, there was support that we discussed last time. I've incorporated the items that the council was interested in, including amending the explanation of how area under roof is counted and including an illustration that Mr. Dambrose assisted with. Also, there's an explanation of an allowance for a CPD or an RPD for additional square footage, if that's what they're seeking, and to ask for additional rooms or bathrooms through a special exception. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns regarding the language before you. I think this is what you had asked for at the last hearing.
Councilor King, do you have any questions for Sarah? None. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
No, I think we discussed this pretty at length on the first reading, so I'm very comfortable with the changes that you've made.
Councilor Woodson?
I'll just make the comment. I love the visuals. I could finally see what everything we're talking about.
And I would thank Albert for that because I would not have been able to come up with it.
No, it's a good
They
illustration.
work. They're great.
Councilor King? Or, sorry, Woodson. Never mind.
I'm Woodson,
Beach.
that one. The beach.
I need cue cards.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for clarification. You just mentioned something about, so what could be converted into habitable space? I understand like lanais that are under roof could be, but you also mentioned parking.
Yes.
So does this mean if someone had parking underneath the unit, that they could take that space and use it for habitable space above?
Yes, it's everything that's underneath that roof line. So if your first floor, and this is the instance, this is the reason that we actually created some of this language, is an instance where there was a parking space on the first floor and a small unit. If they're trying to raise that up and create a livable space, now they can only create habitable space that was the size of the unit on the first floor, and they have that extra square footage that they can't really use, or they make the whole building smaller and shift everything around. So this is just a way for them to essentially have the same size building, just moved up a floor so that the whole first floor is open to meet all the flood requirements.
So then, if you had something that was raised up, and this is post disaster build back, right? So it only applies to those that are run afoul with the 50% rule.
Yes.
Right. So, but if that person could justify the 50% rule, that they could essentially double their square footage.
That could happen if they can justify the 50%. The vast majority of people who just had parking on the first floor are not going to run into that issue.
And so, and I know that we have a variance coming up here that's exactly that, this one scenario you mentioned. Now, is the intent of this just to make things like the variances coming up not have to come for a variance, or is this for an enforcement simplicity, or I mean, what do you think the real benefit of doing this is?
So this clarifies what is actually usable for this. So previously it limited it to internal, like usable square footage. I don't remember exactly. Well, probably find it actually. So basically it was limited to what was habitable space before. And what we're finding in a lot of instances is those very small habitable spaces, say they were built in the 50s. A 50s bathroom is very small. A 50s kitchen is very small. Rebuilding these units at that same size isn't making a lot of sense. But if we can add a little bit of additional square footage and not end up with that much of a bigger building. So that was the intent here, to not allow people to keep the density that they have that's above the allowable density, not to increase the density, but to keep it the same amount as they had previously, but to allow them some additional square footage so that they can make that building make sense. So that was the intent of this.
All right. Now, have you done any kind of analysis about how much additional square footage this would add with all the properties that could be affected?
No, that would be a lot to work through,
Right.
but we can assume that there is some amount of overhang, but you're going to essentially end up with the same size structure. I mean, it's going to be substantially the same size. We're assuming that, if it was 50% damage, they're going to be able to move up the first floor. They still have to meet the criteria of the zoning district. So they can't be more stories than they're allowed to be, more heights than they're allowed to be. And even if they get some additional square footage, they still have to meet the zoning setbacks. So in most instances, you're not giving them that much additional square footage, but it'll help people where they're just running into a tight situation. This also helps with units that maybe had hallways in between them, and the hallways were too narrow and they couldn't really make them work. Now that hallway is usable space, they can add it to their unit and actually maybe create some additional space that they needed for it. But it doesn't give them the right to additional rooms, and it doesn't give them the right to more bathrooms than rooms that they had. So they'd have to come through and get a special exception if they wanted to ask for more rooms. And then I included in this last one, I explicitly say that if you want more square footage than you can go through the CPD or the RPD process, which is stated clearly in the pre-disaster build back, but wasn't explicitly stated here. So I included it.
Okay, because I know that's kind of implied in everything. Everybody, no matter what they want to do, they always have the ability to apply for a CPD or an RPD.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering if the language is even really necessary, because
It may not be, but since it's explicitly stated in post-disaster, I thought, or in the
Pre-disaster?
pre-disaster, I felt that it made sense to go ahead and put it in post-disaster. So
agree.
nobody thought that they were just, well, if I hadn't done it before the storm, I can't do it now. Nope, everybody has the chance to do this.
all right. And it's something else that's in this. It doesn't seem, I know we're really focused on this square footage, but the idea of a small hotel being able to add rooms up to 49, using these rules. Now, again, do we know what the impact of additional density on our island is going to be?
It's going to be very limited because we're not talking about, we're still limiting it to the roof line. So we're not talking about adding hundreds of thousands of square feet. We're talking about adding hundreds of square feet. We're talking about making some of the very small rooms usable, like more modern size rooms. We're not really, this language won't add enough square footage to make that much of a difference in what can be done on these sites.
Is there like a state or federal regulation about a minimum hotel room size?
I would assume that there is in the building code probably, but I couldn't tell you what that is.
Okay.
I don't think it's very much. I think it's like 350 or 400 square feet. It's not a lot.
I'm kind of wondering about the impact of, because I know traditionally when a lot of these places were built, rooms were smaller. It seems like a lot of businesses are going with bigger rooms, but this is kind of a motivation to make more smaller rooms. And I'm just wondering if they butt up against some number where there's a limit on that besides the 49.
You guys tell me what would you be interested in seeing there? Because I don't think that we're going to end up with that much more square footage that can be used for hotel rooms. And if somebody's interested in creating very small rooms, the chances are if it was an older hotel, it already had small rooms. So unless, there might be some anomalies. There might be a few instances where they had very large rooms and they can divide them in half. But that is fairly unlikely, especially allowing for, restrooms and hallways and, all the things that they need in order to make that function.
I could see a scenario though, because I know that, I used to think that you could walk around the town and you can tell how old the structure was by how high it was.
Mm-hmm.
The higher it was, the newer it was. So there's hotels that had like short storage underneath, but then were above the 50% rule because of the extent of Ian. They could get a whole nother floor.
Potentially.
And then with that floor, they could add a lot more hotel rooms. Because, they could be doubling or getting a substantial amount of space. So I'm a little concerned. I'm just kind of asking some questions here. I'm a little concerned that certainly adding parking and things into this picture is making it a little bit open-ended.
Okay.
And have maybe unintended consequences to what people could do. Because I think that, we still have 1 2-lane road out here, and any density we add is going to be detrimental to traffic. And I'm a little hesitant to support it without really knowing what that impact would be.
Okay.
I got a question on that.
Yeah.
How, using, I think what Councilor Veach was getting at, is say you have a property that you could take a larger room and divide it into two, which would increase your density.
Mhm.
Is there anything in this that kicks it over to the density discussion, or would that force it to go into the CPD or the RPD process?
So it's not actually density because it's the multiplier. So your density is going to remain the same, but your multiplier will increase, which we've done through CPDs in the past. Through this process, there wouldn't be anything, but we could certainly include something if there's concern that people could add a lot more hotel rooms and there's a concern about that. I mean, we could put a limit on that. I mean, we could say max of 10 additional rooms or max of whatever number of rooms seems appropriate.
I would be interested, just put some kind of bracket around it, or maybe as a percentage. You know, I want to encourage, you know, small hotels to come back. I just don't want these small hotels to come back as large ones across the board and you know, be essentially losing control of the density we have on the island.
But, okay, they can't though because of the original square footage per se. I mean, it's the base of
Yeah,
everything,
it's-
right? So they really can't double square footage unless they went straight up.
So in the instance that Mr. Veach was talking about, where if they had an entire floor that was considered a story and it was storage, but it was only I think it has to be 6 feet off the ground in order to be considered a story. So if they had a 6-foot tall story on the first floor and they still ended up with more than 50% damage, they could potentially turn that entire first floor into another floor because it is under the roof line. So that would create an entire additional floor. I don't know how many instances of that we're going to see. I can't think of one. There could be though. So I'm not saying that there isn't one, but if they were able to turn that entire first floor that had been storage or parking into an extra floor, they could potentially get a multiplier of the number of rooms that they already have. I think that's unlikely, but it's not impossible. There could be an instance of that. So if you guys would feel more comfortable having a limitation, and I wouldn't say percentage, I would say like a flat number. And the reason is because if it's a percentage, you're automatically disallowing smaller developments to do more, and you're allowing larger developments to do more. Does that make sense? So you're giving more allowance to a larger development than a smaller development.
Right. So you give, if you have a number, then it's preferential to the smaller developments. If you have a percentage, then it's preferential to the larger.
Exactly.
But they're still limited by the 49 regardless.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a step to a definition of a hotel,
Resort.
right?
Yep. That's a resort definition, which gives them additional allowances.
And I know of one hotel who said they were looking at this and they could add a couple of rooms. I look at like the Dolphin Inn, and I don't know what their plans are for the Dolphin Inn, but it looks to me like they're kind of in that scenario where I think they're over the 50% rule, but they were elevated a little bit.
Okay.
So, and whether or not that's, I you know, in my mind, I like to just tighten it up about what constitutes space that they can reuse.
Okay.
And I understand now. And okay, another point. I want to get onto the buffers and things in a bit, but now. If there's now the variance we have coming up where the gentleman has, like you said, he had a half room downstairs and he wants to basically lift it up and insert a floor, which I've seen done in places. If this passes, would he not need his variance?
He needs a different variance. He's over on percent coverage potentially and setbacks. There were already some setback issues with that house.
All right. Okay. Then on to, you mentioned about giving some authority to administrative variances like buffers, parking. What were all those potential administrative variances?
So it's the very last line of this ordinance. If current open space, parking, landscaping, or buffer regulations cannot be met, those requirements may be reduced through a written determination by the director.
Now, because in this instance, they could get an administrative variance, but if they're not doing a post-disaster build back, then they couldn't, and they have to come in for a regular variance?
In this instance, yes. Because this is all under the post-disaster build back regulations.
All right, okay. That again gives you a little bit of a pause, just because it seems to be giving special treatment to people who have a business as opposed to a resident who maybe not use this, right? Because the post-disaster build back is about maintaining non-conforming density when you build back.
Mhm.
And that means if you have extra density, you're probably a business, you're doing rentals.
Potentially.
Well,
But I mean, in all honesty, that's what this whole code is about. I mean, this whole code is about helping people build back after a storm and giving them some leeway in this. So,
for commercial, right?
Both.
for both, because
I
it's
think
all
both.
buildings. It says all buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, though, to my mind, if you have multiple units, you're probably going to be renting one of those. That's where the commercial aspect comes in. And if you don't have multiple units, then you don't need to preserve that density. It's a single family home.
I see your point. I guess I look at it as, we've been fairly consistent with trying to provide an avenue, whether it's commercial or residential, to people that didn't have an avenue before to build back what they had and not just tear down a building and build something 2 or 3 times what they could build under the post-disaster build back policy. So to me, I mean, I understand your points. I think we're getting kind of into to me, it seems like we're getting into the weeds a little bit about things. I'm trying to think properties that could inherently, that maybe had 20 units and now they could go up to 49. I don't know that they would have the land to be able to do that under the guidelines of the roof line square footage. To me, I just see this as an opportunity for those that maybe can't or don't want to tear everything down and start all over and build up something bigger and go through all that, an avenue to get back at least what they had. And I think to your point, there might be a 1-off or a 2-off of someone that may inherently get a room or 2 or maybe 3 that they didn't have before. But I think you made a point of saying that is not the density, that's the factor. So I don't see a real issue of needing to get real granular with the amount of rooms, because unless I'm missing something, I can't think of a lot of properties when you look at the overhead view, if you will, the shadow from straight above of where the roof line is, how they're going to really be able to increase the amount of rooms. There was not a lot of buildings that I can think of or remember that had parking underneath them before the storm that would allow them to now have a whole nother level of rental units, but maybe I'm missing something.
And also they're still required to meet the floor area ratio, the height, the setbacks. Because although that section does talk about parking, landscaping, buffer, open space, it doesn't talk about the zoning district requirements for height and FAR and setbacks.
And like I said, I know of one who said they can get 2 more rooms, and I've only talked to one. Now, it's not exactly much of a scientific sampling.
Right.
But now the other thing is you mentioned the multiplier. Now the multiplier is about what people have by right to build right on their property. Now I assume that if someone's doing a post-disaster build back, then that means that they had more rooms, more density than they were allowed by the multiplier, right?
Yes.
So the multiplier really in post-disaster build back is really not a factor, because if they qualified under that, then they wouldn't need to go through this part of the code.
Yes.
All right.
Any other questions for Sarah? All right, may have some more after public comment, but
Thank you.
We'll now open it up for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to? You got some?
Yep, I have some. First one up is Larry Smith.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. The thing I'm passing out is going to be the second thing I talk about, but I just wanted to comment on this. I own what was a legal duplex at 121 Palermo Circle. It was totally destroyed by Ian. I rented one unit out and lived in the second unit. And the first thing I want to speak about is allowing more square footage in favor of what Sarah just talked about when I build back, and also allowing more bedrooms and bathrooms. You know, my house was 1937. Back then, it was common for all houses to have one bathroom. Now, you know, especially for rentals, you want one bathroom for one full bath for every bedroom. So it'd be nice to be able to build back a larger, same footprint, but more square footage and more bedrooms and more bathrooms than what I had before. Because I got all my flood insurance, but only 25% of my wind insurance, and the cost to build back is so high that I'll need more bedrooms and baths in order to get enough rental income to pay what will be my new mortgage when I build the house back. And I live in one unit and I rent the other. I'm nearing retirement, and I'm going to be dependent on that rental income to support me during retirement. The second issue is what I just passed out. And this is something, I don't know if it goes along with this, but I have an unusual shaped lot, and there's over 10 feet by 60 feet of unowned land behind me between the seawall of the canal and the back of my property line. And while this is a little weird, it's very common on Fort Myers Beach. That land is not owned by the county. It's not owned by the town of Fort Myers Beach. Nobody owns it. It was created when originally the canal was rounded, and when they put the seawall in sometime later, probably in the 1950s or so, they squared it off and created like 600 square feet of land there that nobody owns. I have to take care of that land, and I'm just asking that in the future, I'll be applying for a variance to build 25 feet from the seawall as opposed to 25 feet from the back of my property line. And I'm just asking you to be reasonable when reviewing these types of variances, because that lot was canal front in 1925 when the property was subdivided. And then when the seawall was built, you know, they squared it off. So those are just the two things I wanted to mention. I'll pass around this. This is the original. I only have one copy of these, but that was the original subdivision, and then what it looks like on the Lee County tax records now. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
Oh, good timing.
Yeah. Next up, I have Christopher Mostero.
Good morning, Council. My name is Christopher Mostero. I'm a property owner and small business owner on Fort Myers Beach. My variance is coming before you guys after this agenda item. But I did want to speak on the post-disaster build-back policy. I am very supportive of this post-disaster build-back policy. This is allowing me to rebuild my home. I am in that scenario where I had a parking spot on half of my downstairs and a lower unit on the other half of the downstairs. I want to elevate and keep my home floods, and I really wouldn't be able to do that without allowing me to increase the square footage to the roof line. So I'm in very much supportive of this. Thank you for town staff for your hard work on this, and LPA, you know, and everyone who has spent a lot of time on this issue. I do want to talk about the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. I think it's interesting that you're allowing hotels to increase the number of rooms based on their square footage, but not residents. I want to echo the LPA who said you shouldn't put a limit on this. You shouldn't put a limit on the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. So I am asking you to take out item 4 of this that limits the number of bedrooms and bathrooms that we could build. We're already limited on what we could build on the number of by the number of square footage, by our variant or by our setbacks, all of that. If we were to build a single family home, we could build as many bedrooms and bathrooms as we want. All this is letting us do is build an additional kitchen. That's how the town calculates density, is a kitchen. So I could put 3 kitchenettes in my house, 6 bedrooms in my house, and really not have to get into the post-disaster build back. But to keep that density you're calling density is allowing me to keep a kitchen. I really feel like you shouldn't be limiting the number of bedrooms based on square footage. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
John McLean.
Good morning, Mayor,
Morning,
Vice
John.
Mayor, Council, staff. Good to see you all. John McLean, Negrit Street. My comment is similar to the last speaker in that specifically there's a limit on residential for increasing the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. And that is actually counter to what the discussion was with the LPA. The LPA suggested that within the existing footprint, allow homeowners to build the number of bedrooms or bathrooms that they choose. As a little bit of background, I'm elevating my house. I have a double garage that will now be 12 feet in the air, and that will be built out to usable space. I'm hoping to build a bedroom in there. I could build a den, but I'm hoping to build a bedroom and a bathroom to go with it. Specifically, when I raised this concern before, it was said that it was specifically around commercial properties, and I understand everything that you're doing there and completely agree with it. However, I think that the discussion took a bit of a turn in that there was a concern about existing homes being built out with more bedrooms and bathrooms, thereby increasing the amount of rentals in some of those areas, and that was the concern. I live in a monthly rental, not a weekly rental district, and it should be no concern in a single family house whether I have 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. I believe that one of the ways that we might be able to go around this is to excuse me, ensure that the restrictions are not put in place in areas where there is monthly rental. Those are fully residential. Those are not being short-term rentals where you would end up building a rooming house or whatever you like. We're not talking about putting a small, 7 small bedrooms. We're talking about single family homes that are looking to build an additional bedroom for their grandchildren or what have you. That is my concern. I feel like the restrictions that had originally been addressed by the LPA have been pushed aside for some additional restrictions on residential, when I know that the intent of this was to help out the small business owners. And the result of the way the discussion has gone has actually put further restrictions on homeowners. And I would ask you to remove the restriction on additional beds and baths for residential specifically. If there's any questions, please.
I have a question while you're up there, John. Nancy, can we do that for areas that are monthly rentals alone? Would we be allowed legally to do that? It's an interesting suggestion.
So I don't know that your ordinance is making a differentiation between monthly and
Right, but I mean,
and
could
annual.
we make that differentiation? I mean, could we
I think you can, because it would be within the purview of the title of the ordinance. So if you wanted to add some language to that effect, I think it would be appropriate.
Thank you.
And that wouldn't be seen as a modification to our short-term rental ordinance, is my question.
I have not done that analysis.
I will almost
So-
guarantee you that it will. We had the issue with the monthly rentals before, where someone wanted to change the wording from 30 days within that month to, if I want to rent it from July 15th to August 15th, that's considered a month. And the AD came back and said, absolutely not. You will lose your grandfather status.
And I appreciate that, but I wonder in this particular instance, the reference is less stringent. So I wonder, when you're doing something less stringent, could we get around that concern?
I would not be comfortable giving you a response kind of on the fly. My recommendation, however, would be that you consider what's before you today and perhaps enact it, adopt it, and then bring it back for further review on that specific issue.
Can you take a look at that in the interim?
I
Well,
can.
Yeah.
The request I have actually would be broader than that. That was a a halfway point, if you will, it would be to remove the restrictions on residential houses. Whether I understand that the LPA discussion was, I guess, further clarified by a concern that there be more short-term rentals. I think that it's causing further hardship on existing residents to address a concern that may or may not occur.
I got you. I was just trying to find a compromise
So am I.
position.
I mean,
I
that's
think
what
there's
am
going to
too.
be a lot of discussion about this after public. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm
Okay,
sure.
thank you very much.
For clarification, is yours a single family home or a duplex? Then this will not apply to you. It will not apply. It only, yes, post-disaster build back only applies to anything that's over density. So if you're currently over the allowable density, then you can go to post-disaster build back to get some relief. If you're at what you should be, which 1 unit per most lots, you're fine. You can build back whatever you want to build back within the zoning regulations.
Is there-
Mr. Mayor, may I just wanted to point out a few things about the ordinance that's in your packet.
Mhm.
It does refer to an Exhibit A, and the language for Exhibit A is found on page 84 through 86 of your packet. And also drawing your attention to, it's on page 72. There's a couple whereas clauses with just some blanks. As you know that we are required to have 2 readings of an ordinance and an advertising, so we will be inserting the date to show that it was properly advertised. But the next whereas clause talks about a business impact estimate, and I think that this may be the first ordinance on second reading that's coming before you. That is a new requirement. There is a copy of it in your packet. We are also required to post that. So any ordinances, when they are advertised in the newspaper, we will also be posting a business impact estimate on your website. The statute itself does have a number of exceptions, and the business impact estimate for this particular ordinance is on page 75 of your packet. The exceptions are listed there, and you'll see that we did check that the proposed ordinance is accepted from the requirement of doing a business impact statement. However, as a matter of policy and procedure, we will be doing business impact estimates for every ordinance that comes through and making the appropriate notation if it's actually exempt from a study or an analysis of whether this particular ordinance has an impact on commerce and business in the community. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to.
Just for
get
those that
out
are
there.
listening, when we say business impact, is that fiscal impact of business, or how that seems like a very broad?
It is, the legislature didn't give us some specific direction. However, they did give us a little bit, and there's a couple estimates that, or a couple criteria that local governments are asked to look at to determine if there is a business impact, and those are numbers 1 through 4 that appears in your packet.
And when we use the term impact, could it be a beneficial impact, or does it have to just be adverse impact?
No, it can be a beneficial impact, and that would be stated in the business impact and that estimate as well.
Okay.
Any other is there anyone else that would like
That's
to
all I
speak
have signed up.
under public comment for this? If not, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for some discussion. I guess I'll start. I got a couple things. I think Chris brought up a very valid point with the hotel rooms versus the single family. I'm still not in support of inherently just allowing more bedrooms under the square footage. I think the intent of this post-disaster build back amendment was to allow you to build back what you had, but meet the current codes. And I believe there was a caveat added to be able to allow you, if you had a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and now you build back a 2-bedroom, 2 bath, that you can do that. And the reason that I supported that was because of your neighbors and anyone else. It allows the process to still go forward if within anyone's case that spoke today that they could add a 3rd bedroom instead of a den and another bathroom within that. They still have an avenue in which that they can go and do that they did not have before, to be able to come and ask for the special exception. And the reason I support that is because then it offers your neighbors the ability to come in and have input on it. Whether they're for it or against it, we don't know, but it still allows you an avenue that you didn't have before. But it also allows the voice to your neighbors, whether you're in a monthly street or you're on a weekly street. I live on a monthly street, and I can tell you the neighbor has rented the house for a week, not the entire month, but they can't rent it again the entire month. But it's been pretty loud sometimes, but that's where you live and you just deal with it. But that's why I supported the ordinance the way it was written. But I think, again, Chris brought up a very valid point. Why are in this ordinance the way it's written, we could potentially being allowing a commercial business the opportunity to have more rooms, but we're not allowing that by right for individual homeowners. So to me,
It's just to clarify that, I thought that Sarah just said an individual homeowner isn't restricted by this.
if you're a single family home, it's
Right.
not restricted.
And then I'm just going to clarify the thing about a business. But then if you're renting a place out, that's a business. The gentleman who came up here described himself as a businessman. He's got a rental.
Right. Well, so I guess that adds to more of the question. If you own a duplex or a triplex that is specifically used as a business for Airbnbs or VRBOs, does that entitle you then to under the commercial, because you're not listed as a hotel, you can't do that? So to me, it brings out Chris's point a little bit more, that if I'm using this as a rental income, but I don't qualify to be a hotel motel, I'm being penalized by not being able to put more square foot or more rooms within my business, even though it's not a hotel. Whereas a hotel, because they're listed as a hotel, would be allowed to do that.
Yes. So that's a use difference. So a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, that's a use. Whereas the hotel motel, that's a completely separate use with different requirements and different zoning districts. And they have different density allowances. So you have the density, then the multiplier that hotels, motels can use. So, I mean, we're talking about a completely different type of use and a completely different type of business. I do understand what you're saying. And if there's interest in allowing some flexibility, you can, but we don't really get the ability, we're not adding more density in any case. So for the residential units, the reason that they qualify is not because they have a duplex or a triplex. The reason they qualify is because they're over density. So if a duplex or a triplex existed on a lot that was large enough to have the amount of density that they have, they don't have to go through post-disaster. They can build whatever they want that meets the zoning and the, all the setback requirements and the floor area ratio or the building coverage.
And I certainly understand that and appreciate your explaining that. But my concern is more of the financial aspect. And I think that's at the root of it, what a lot of these discussions are about when you're talking about building back more. And it's the cost to build it, cost to rent it. You need money to survive if you retire, things like that. But the points that were brought up during public comment lead me to believe that we're not allowing someone who is using it, even though their use is different than a hotel, we're not allowing them the same rights that we would be allowing a hotel business to be able to do. So the hotel business, the way it's written, based on what the comments were made, in my opinion, if I'm a hotel, I can get 2 or 3 more rooms, I'm financially going to benefit from that. Whereas if I'm a single family homeowner, or not a single family, sorry, a duplex, triplex, whatever it is, that's in a zone that is allowed to have rentals, and I can, based on the square footage, what I can do from the roof line now, based on the way it's worded, I could add 1 bedroom, maybe 2 bedrooms, and still be legal and conforming and all of that. But I can't do it. Therefore, I'm financially being penalized, whereas a hotel is going to get a benefit. So I guess to me, it comes down to, if you allow one, you got to allow them both, or you don't allow either one.
It's an interesting point. I don't particularly, I mean, they're very distinctive differences. Like Sarah said, hotel, you're registered with the state differently. The rules you have are quite a bit different as far as safety equipment, as far as how you manage it. And a vacation rental is a home that is being rented out. To me, they're definitely 2 different things. And I could see with what you're saying, Dan, it's almost conceivable someone could have a 5-bedroom house and turn it into 5 separate rental units. I mean, I think that I think hotels and vacation rentals are different. I also think that, there's some conversation about weekly versus monthly rental areas. I live in a weekly rental area. The neighborhood I'm in is a weekly rental area. It's still a residential neighborhood. Still people live there. It's not exclusively a resort kind of place. So I think that, those 2 points are interesting, but I think that if you try to blur the line between vacation rentals and hotels, you're opening up a pretty big can of worms.
I'm not trying to blur the lines. I'm simply trying to say, I think the consistency that we've shown over the last year of changes that we've made is to allow people to build back what they had by right and not have to go through the process to come in and ask for it or force them to tear it down and build back. But I've been hesitant, and I think the council and LPA for that matter have been in unison and hesitant on just allowing by right people to do more than they could inherently do on top of allowing them to build back what they couldn't build back before. That's the whole point, I thought, of what the post-disaster build back was. If you didn't have it before, you couldn't have it, or you had to build back exactly. We're allowing through this I think everyone has agreed that they like it, but the only stickler is we can't have an extra bedroom. You just have to go through the special exception process to get it. Whereas before you would have had to go through the entire process to build back what you can build back by right. And I'm not saying I'm for or against you having another bedroom. I'm just saying it allows the process to play out where everybody's voice can be heard. So you're not just, because if I live next door to someone that has a triplex that was 3 1-bedroom, 1 baths, but it was a large 1-bedroom, and now I can, because I can still fit under that square footage of the roof line, I can build back 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms within that. And I understand you could tear it down, you could build a house. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is now you got a triplex you're going to have twice as many people staying in that, which goes to everybody talks about the traffic, and everybody talks about more people, whether it's density or not. There's more rooms, which means it's more money for a resident if they're renting it out, or a hotel if they're renting it out, which means there's going to be more people staying there. And I just think it's only fair that if you do that, you can do it. You just got to go through the special exception process so that those within the area that live around you have a voice that can be heard. Maybe they're for it, maybe they're against it. I don't know, but it allows you that process still. It doesn't just give it to you because you can have it. I think trying to get some balance here, and I understand the argument for both sides. So either, in my opinion, either you allow it for the individual owners and the hotels, or you don't allow it for either one. With that, I'll shut up for a bit and listen to everybody else.
I thought that was really interesting, Mr. Mayor. Sarah, could you comment on that?
I think that is fine if that is how council's interested in doing, and maybe potentially change what we had in here as the hotel. Then hold on, let me find it. The owner may choose to reduce the number of rooms or increase the number of rooms, but may not create more guest unit space than defined and blah, blah, blah. So if we wanted to say that they have to keep the same number of rooms, if we would want to treat it the same way as we treated residential units, we talk about they can get it if they ask for a special exception. I mean, that would be possible. They could come in through they get the number of units that they previously had. They get potentially more square footage based on this code section. But if they want to ask for more rooms, then they need to go through a special exception process. Does that seem appropriate? I mean, it's treating both residential and commercial in the same way.
But it would also allow the hotels, if they had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit, say, if they have the square footage, they could also make it a 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
Yes. Yeah. Without
having to come through the special exception process. And to me, that would be what I would support, what you just put out there, because it allows a level playing field for both and still allows flexibility to do more if you want.
So with the modification to this agreement, what you're saying is just essentially take out the additional rooms allowed for hotel rooms.
Yeah,
by right. They can always come back for a CPD.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just mine, but whatever the will of the council is, like I said, I just think it has to be one way or the other. Either you allow it for both or you don't allow it for either, so that it's a level playing field and it doesn't give an advantage or disadvantage to either one who are using these as rental incomes to support their livelihoods. So my support would be the way it's written for the commercial to make that, as you said, Sarah, to match the residential part of it.
Okay,
I believe
let's,
you had it in,
well, let's step back here. So, because commercial and residential, to me, I'm not, you know, if those terms are really meaning the same thing to everybody. We're talking about hotels versus vacation rentals. Because residential, like when we just talked to, Sarah just pointed out, if I'm rebuilding my house, I can rebuild whatever I can fit within the zoning parameters. It doesn't really matter what I had before. That's residential. Commercial, I think, is I it described to me, because of this density that makes it commercial. So so both hotels and vacation rentals were to be considered commercial, according to my understanding.
No, that is not correct. Density doesn't make it commercial. So if it's over density, then you can apply the post-disaster build back. But commercial it's a business, and it typically has to do with also construction type. And it has to be that zoning district. So while you may be able to rent out a unit in a residential district, that is still a residential use. That's still considered
Okay.
a duplex or a triplex, which is residential.
And so then the big step is that if you are a hotel, then you are no longer residential.
That's correct. Yes.
I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor.
good. I've been talking
I
a
was
lot.
Just so we have something to actually discuss formally, not trying to shorten the debate, but I would move the compromise that Sarah just suggested in response to the mayor's concerns. And you could state it more eloquently than I can, Sarah.
Sarah, just, there was a motion you made.
Yes.
Can you just restate
a
what
weak
you?
motion? Yeah.
Can you restate what you said?
Hold on one moment. Let me wordsmith this real quick.
But I'll just, while she's working on it, I hope I don't distract her too much. As far as the overall intent, I would be more favorable to not allowing the additional hotel rooms, even though I don't think it's a huge impact, than the potential unintended consequences of allowing a lot more density for rebuilding residential houses that are higher density.
But again, Sarah said this does not pertain to residential houses. So if you have a triplex and you want to tear it down and make it your own residential house, you then build it back to.
She's saying no, a triplex in a residential neighborhood is a residential use. Just trying to keep those terms straight.
Let her finish words, ready. See what she comes up with. Sarah, do you need a minute? We can.
Nope, I think we've got it. The owner may, so this is page 86 of your packet. Number 3. Hold on, 1, 2. Okay, E3. The owner may choose to reduce the number of rooms, period. The owner may also choose to increase the number of rooms, but may through a special exception request, but may not create more guest unit space than defined in section 34-3238 2E1.
So that would be pretty similar to what you have in packet page 85 4A. You've added that extra. Property owner may request an increase in the number of bedrooms and bathrooms through the special exception process.
Yes.
Essentially wording the same wording, but just adding it to the hotel room part.
Yes.
Which doesn't allow them, if they had 5 units, they can't go to 10 units without, even though the space would allow, they would have to come through the special exception process.
That's correct. And then if anybody wants additional square footage, then they have to come in through the CPD or the RPD.
Square footage or additional rooms.
Additional rooms, special exception.
Oh, CPD, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
You said.
So we've got 2 processes for 2 different
Right.
things and ways to get where people want to go.
Now, could that all be? So I'm just trying to think. I don't want to create more process for someone. So if they're going to come through the CPD, the special exception part of it could be added into that CPD.
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay.
correct.
No,
But if they just wanted to add rooms, keep the number of square footage,
wouldn't
they
need
don't
the
have to go through the
CPD, they would do
CPD or
special
RPD. Yeah. Quicker process.
does that make sense to you?
It does if it does to you.
It does. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that levels the playing field. It's not, it's allowing, again, I keep saying, but we're allowing someone to build back what they couldn't build back before the storm. So it's allowing the wording for that. It's allowing to give them more space. It's allowing them to get extra bathrooms. And it's still allowing them and their neighbors to have a voice in trying to add to the rooms if they want. But
Very good.
it's the same for commercial and residential now.
Very good. Then my motion is seeking a second.
I will motion by Vice Mayor Adderall, seconded by Councilor King. Further discussion? Councilor Woodson, you're leaning in like you'd like to say something. No?
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Anything else, Bill?
I'm still a little concerned about using, parking as kind of a wild card to me. I understand kind of the logic that if you had parking under your house, the entire thing was lifted, your chances of being violating the 50% rule are very slim. So I think I'll agree with the amendment. I'm just still a little concerned that maybe that with adding parking into the space that we're taking open space, making it inhabitable space, there could be some unintended consequences for that.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, but I look at it the other way. I look at it as you're taking what was potentially a unit on the ground, beside parking, and actually just bringing it up to a more resilient height, and still adding actually more parking now down below to be able that you didn't have before. So to me, it's a win-win. You're getting things up off the ground, so they hopefully don't have the damage again, but you're also increasing the amount of parking for the size that you have of the building, as opposed to before. Some of these units only had one place to park, but they could have 2 or 3 people in it. So I see it kind of as a win-win. But your
Yeah,
point
and I
is
understand,
taken
like looking at the gentleman who's coming up for his variance, he wants to just, and I've known other people who are doing this. They want to lift their house up high enough to put another floor in and do an Oreo on that. I understand that is a need. But I guess I think my concerns, the point is that, a lot of places with the history we've had, what happened is over the years, people have built on the ground floor, could have been well before the town was formed. And then those are very flood prone. So I think, given that there's I think an overall benefit to the town to make these properties more resilient, I think I would go ahead and accept that.
All right, there's no other discussion. Roll call vote, correct? Or Sarah's got some
Did,
more to say?
when you made the motion, did you include the change to 2E3? I apologize, I just didn't hear it.
2E3. Give me a little more on that, Sarah.
Motion to approve the ordinance with the discussed change to section 2E3.
Yes.
I believe you did before she read it word for word, but Nancy, do we need to amend the motion just to make sure that it matches what was stated by Sarah?
Yes,
Okay,
preferable.
I would amend my motion as stated.
I will second my second, or I will amend my second. All right, roll call vote, Vice Mayor Adderholt.
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Council Woodson,
Aye.
Councilor Beach,
Aye.
Councilor King.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Oh, this is where I got to meet. The next item on our agenda is public hearing for review of various land use requests. For the benefit of the public, please be aware that these items are quasi judicial in nature. Our attorney will further explain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Zoning revisions, special exceptions, and variances, as the matter is before council, these are all quasi judicial in nature. And this requires our public hearing to comply with procedural requirements that have been established in Florida law and in our land development code. Quasi-judicial proceedings, they're less formal than proceedings before circuit court, but more formal than the remainder of our meeting. And they follow the basic standards of due process that requires certain notices, the application of the correct standards and decisions, must be made on competent substantial evidence that is presented to the town council in written documents or through oral testimony. Upon presentation, the town council will evaluate the testimony and the information for your next item and draw a conclusion regarding whether the criteria in the land development code or state law as may be applicable has been satisfied. Pure speculation or opinion that is not based on competent facts legally is not considered, cannot legally be considered by the town council in evaluating the agenda item. Testimony by professionals who have been qualified as experts in a particular area has been considered competent substantial evidence by Florida courts, as well as testimony by neighbors and residents who have fact-based information such as minutes, surveys, engineering reports, or based on their personal information. If you intend to speak, please keep these issues related to quasi-judicial hearings in mind. When you come forward, state your name clearly for the record, whether or not you have been sworn in, your qualifications or interest in the matter. And go ahead, Mayor.
Oh.
You're next.
Don't we have to swear people in? According to the cheat sheet?
So I will continue then. For purposes of efficiency, before the beginning of the meeting, we will dispose of a few housekeeping items. Madam Clerk, were all agenda items properly noticed to our land development code?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And if at this time, if any town council member has a conflict of interest that would prohibit them from voting on any of these items, please disclose this for the record. Does anyone have a conflict?
No.
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 Okay. So Madam Clerk, if you can swear in the witnesses.
Okay, so you want me to read this part too? Then? Okay. At this time, if there's anyone present, including the applicant or the property owner or staff who intends to provide testimony in any of these hearings, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by me. All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yeah. Parties have been sworn.
All right. This item is Resolution 23-185. Approve with conditions, deny a variance, LDC Section 34-638, Table 34-3, dimensional regulations and conventional zoning districts for the front setback in the RC zoning district for property located at 923 3rd Street to allow 100 feet of additional building coverage over the maximum allowed. If any town council member has any ex parte communication to disclose, please let us know the subject discussed, the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, any correspondence that you received, or any observations made of the site. Councilor King?
None.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
None.
I have had none. Councilor Woodson?
I know the property well, but no conversations.
Councilor Beach?
I've listened to the applicant in public comment and I've checked out the site on LIPA.
Okay. Jason Smalley has been qualified as an expert already by the town council, and based on his education and experience has been accepted as an expert in the field of land use, planning and development in the town of Fort Myers Beach. Are there any other individuals who would like to be qualified as expert witnesses on behalf of the applicant at this time? Seeing none, has the property owner applicant seen a copy of the agenda backup materials from staff? Yes, he has. Well, Jason, please proceed.
Good morning, councilors. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm with the Community Development Department, in particular, the Planning and Zoning Division. Today, we are here for a request for two separate variances on a single property on 923 3rd Street. As was mentioned by the mayor, there is one request that is being asked for a front setback. That request is 9.5 feet. That is to the existing deck that exists on the property. That deck will be elevated and will become a third floor. So that's the second living level above the proposed lower garage area. Once it goes to the third floor, it will be non-compliant without the setback variance because it will now be on the second floor. The other request is sort of intertwined with that request. The applicant is requesting approximately 100 square feet of additional roofed area over the 40% max that would be allowed by code. A large portion of that is the deck is covered. And so when we include that area into there in conjunction with the rest of the building, that would push them over the edge of the 40%. And so they're requesting that approximately 100 square additional feet. As was mentioned earlier, this request is also intertwined with the discussion about the post-disaster build back that the council just had. And the lower area as it exists today, the entire square footage of it is right approximately 1,125 square feet, give or take a little bit. And so the applicant would be attempting to use that entire area on what would become his first living level or the second floor of the proposed building. That would be an increase of approximately 550 square feet over what he would have been allowed to redevelop under the post-disaster build back policy before today. If there are any questions from the council about the process or anything that needs clarification, staff is here. Otherwise, the applicant is also here to speak for himself.
Jason, in the rendering in the packet, you've got 11-foot BFE and then 19-foot NEVD. So are they essentially building 8 feet higher than what is required or the minimum required?
So no, the applicant is, as far as I know, going to be building a little bit above base flood elevation. I don't remember exactly offhand what the above ground would be, but they would be meeting all of the flood requirement heights with the reconstruction of the home.
And this variance, if it wasn't for the third story or the second level, living level, it wouldn't be necessary because they had it before, right? I mean, the front deck was there before the storm.
It was. This is an interesting scenario, as Councilor Veach had mentioned, the sort of Oreo design that's being done here, where you move up the living level that becomes that sort of center sandwich level. The current living level would then become the third level on top. So the new second level, that sandwich level, is going to be completely new, utilizing the existing square feet. So the density that he's allowed, he has 2 units there that will continue to be effective because he's using the post-disaster build back policy. What he's asking for today is to approve that third level, which is right now his first living level. But as soon as he moves it up to what would be the third level or second living level, that isn't supported by the code, which allows for additional protrusion of front decks, but they have to serve that first level. So as soon as he moves that deck up, it is already protruding into the front setback, which is allowed as of right today on his first level. But once he moves it up, that now would be non-compliant and be non-compliant for the amount that it already sits into the setback, approximately 9.5 feet. So with that said, you are blessing an already existing setback just on the third level or second living level.
And have you had any feedback from any of the neighbors in opposition of this?
I have not heard any opposition to this.
Any other questions for Jason? Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Would the applicant proceed with your presentation at this time? Chris?
Good morning again, Council. Chris Mastero, 923 3rd Street. This is my home. This is my primary residence. I purchased the home in 2017. The second floor of the house, there's a second floor of the house. The house is up on stilts. Below the second floor of the house was an enclosed lower level apartment. When I purchased the home in 2017, the lower level apartment flooded 11 times inside the house, water intrusion inside the house, 11 times between May and October, the first year I owned the house. I've been in front of previous councils until my face turned blue, trying to get drainage issues on 3rd Street addressed. When they did the water line projects, they put flags in down the street where storm basins were supposed to go, and they were never installed. So flooding and stormwater is a huge issue on our street. That's why I need to elevate my home. In Hurricane Irma, I received 10 inches of water inside my home downstairs. In Hurricane Ida, that just skirted the coast, in the Tropical Storm Ida that just skirted the coast and hit us, I received about 6 inches of water in my first floor downstairs. Hurricane Ian, we received 3.5 feet of water on the second floor of the home. That was about 2 feet above base flood elevation on the property. So yes, base flood elevation is 11 feet. We have to build at 12 feet. I need to push up higher because we saw the water higher in Ian. The Lacedalia, we got about 2.5 feet of water downstairs. It was so close to my electrical panels once again. And then the storm over the weekend, 1.5 feet of water downstairs again. So again, the need is to make my property a little bit more resilient, build a little bit higher, build above base flood elevation. So that's what I'm trying to do here today. I am trying to rebuild the space that I lost downstairs that was enclosed. I am looking to push my primary structure, my current living level, up to the 3rd floor. The code does allow me to have a deck as the structure stands into the front setback, but it's that issue where when I'm wanting to raise it to the 3rd floor, that's why I'm here before you today, is why I need that variance. The 42%, I want to address that a little bit. Town code says building coverage is defined by exterior walls, whether they're screened or not screened. My front porch is not screened, it's open air. I feel like it shouldn't count for building coverage. Town staff is telling me it needs to count for building coverage because it has a roof on it. That's how they define building coverage. Even though the town code explicitly says within exterior walls, screened or not screened. That's a bit why I was a little persistent on the post-disaster build back issue, getting that visual design that kind of clears up that gray area of what's considered square footage and what's not. That's what I'm asking you for here today. My exterior walls, my building coverage does not exceed 40%. We're under the 40%. It's once you throw in that front deck that town staff is telling me I have to count because it has a roof over it, that's what's pushing me to that 42% building coverage.
Questions for Chris? Councilor King?
None.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Councilor Woodson?
None.
Councilor Veach?
I'd just say, Chris, that you are the poster child for the value of raising your house up, because all the people we have, he's coming from different neighborhoods. I mean, the town can do so much with stormwater, but eventually it comes down to the owner's responsibility to make their house resilient.
Yeah.
And I think, you made a valid point. I believe somewhere we actually encourage porches and decks. So your point is valid. And I know what you're talking about when the gray area between it's under roof, but it's not screened. I've seen that as well. Other than that, I think your design is great. I think the fact that you're going even higher than the recommended base flood elevation speaks volumes to why this post-disaster build back policy needed to be changed, and commend you for that. I don't have any questions. Thanks. All right. It's public comment. Would anyone? Oh, I better make sure I read it word for word here. Hold on. Are there any members of the public who would wish to comment on this matter? If so, please come forward to the podium and identify yourself, provide your address and whether you were sworn in. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, we will close it, bring it back to the council. I will now close the public hearing and request discussion or a motion from town council to approve with conditions, deny with reasons, or a continuance to a time certain.
I'd move to approve resolution 23-185.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Councilor King, seconded by Councilor Woodson. Is there any discussion?
Just a couple comments on things that were said, because I've heard a lot of complaints about the flooding on 3rd Street. I've seen it, particularly after rains. I've talked to Christy Corey at length about it, and the issue they had was put in the stormwater, where does it go? Because they didn't have the height to hook it into the old San Carlos system, and they didn't have any right of way to go through Moss Marine. So it wasn't necessarily because of the town; it was because of gravity. But I do appreciate that, making your house more resilient in an area that's flooding, taking matters into your own hands. I'm supportive.
Any other discussion? Is there a roll call vote? Counselor King,
Aye.
Counselor Woodson,
Aye.
Counselor Veach,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Resolution 185 is approved unanimously. Chris?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there is a substitution that needs to be made for your next item.
Okay.
It's Resolution 189. It should actually be Resolution 187, and I have a copy of that to provide.
We'll take a break.
That's okay.
Break time.
We will take a brief 5-minute break. We'll come back at 11 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting back to order. It is 11:03. The next is administrative agenda, Resolution 23-187, the mooring system replacement construction management services. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving supplemental task agreement number 21 of contract RFQ-20-06-AD between the town and Coastal Engineering Consultants, Inc. for mooring system replacement construction management services in the town of Fort Myers Beach canals for a cost not to exceed $14,168 and provide for an effective date. Chad?
Good morning, council. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, compliments of the season. This STA you have in front of you is for Coastal Engineering Consultants to support the marine contractor that we have. It's going to be replacing our mooring systems to remove and replace 70 systems. We're hoping that we'll have at least 25 put in by the end of the year. The supply chain bottleneck is with the mooring balls. So as many mooring balls as we have is how many we'll install. And as soon as we get the other balls in the new year, they'll continue to be installed. Do y'all have any particular questions on this item, or?
Just how many are currently open? I think it was 13.
There's 13 open in the west field. That's on Pink Shell Way, north of the pier, and on the Middle East and the Far East fields, we'll have again about 25, depending on how many mooring balls, maybe up to 30.
Okay. Any questions for Chad?
I'd move approval of resolution 23-187.
I'll second.
Okay.
We got approval by, we got a motion by Vice Mayor Adderholt, and I believe a second came in first by Councilor King. Ooh. Is there any other discussion?
Just out of curiosity, as part of conversation here, Chad, what pieces, I know the next one is similar, what pieces do we need to have together to have the mooring field operational again? You have a mooring field office now, right?
Yes, sir. So the different components are, we have the mooring systems. So we have 89 mooring ball systems that are permitted with the FDEP. Right now, 13 of those 89 are operational. We have issues with 6 of the balls on the west field on the north side. Issues with Coast Guard and the Army Corps channel issues that's permitted. We're working through it with the feds to get those open as well. And again, the rest of the systems, 30 by the end of the 25 to 30 by the end of this month, and the rest in the first quarter of next year. The next part of that is for the mooring renters to get to the upland services. So a dinghy dock right now. The Matanzas Inn is providing us dinghy dock services for 90 days is what they offered when we signed our upland services contract with them. And the next item we'll be speaking to getting an operational dinghy dock for the mooring field renters to access upland services. So systems, dinghy dock. The next is the upland services, which include the bathroom, showers, laundry facilities for the mooring field renters to use to mitigate gray water input into our surface waters. And then we also have, Harbor Master Office is another component where we have an office in close proximity to the mooring field just to service those patrons, give them information, and serve as a base of operations to service the mooring field. We have our mooring field service boat and our pump out vessel, both of which are used for the mooring field as well.
And what's the status of the upland services?
So we are in the current agreement. Y'all approved that agreement with Matanzas Inn for those upland services for the bathrooms and laundry and shower facilities. So those are operational. So we are operational right now. The more balls we put on the system, the busier things are going to get. We have a waiting list right now, people wanting to come and use those facilities.
Okay, so those are pretty close to being operational.
We are operational, yes, sir.
I mean,
Just only with 13 balls.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions for Chad? Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 23-185, temporary dinghy docks, a resolution of the Town Council of Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving the town to procure 2 floating docks from Snookbite Marina in an amount not to exceed $2,000, authorizing the town manager to procure Coastal Engineering Consultant, Inc. services and additional materials to install the floating docks to temporarily service the mooring field in an amount not to exceed $4,000 and providing for an effective date. Chad?
Yep. So this is really a gift price from Snookbite. Those docks are worth a lot more than that. They're providing them to us for us to use as our dinghy dock to service the mooring field patrons, so they can access the upland services and provide a little bit more space for more dinghies than what's available now. So a big thank you to Snookbite manager for offering that up, and then the remainder you have for just engineering services and additional bits and pieces that we'll need to get those 2 floating docks installed under the bridge.
Questions for Chad?
Mr. Town Manager, I would move approval of Resolution 23-185 with a big thank you to Snookbite Marina.
I'll second.
And a motion by Vice Mayor Adderholt, seconded by Counselor Veach. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Resolution 23-185 passes unanimously. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
Next, we have the fiscal year 2022 audit report. That's going to be Joe.
Good morning, Joe Onzik, Director of Finance. As Jeff Taylor from the chair of the audit committee had recommended, this resolution is before you to accept the 2022 audit report as prepared by Malden and Jenkins. The audit report was presented to the committee, and if you were watching or it is available, it was broadcast at the audit committee meeting as well. So just a couple comments I wanted to highlight again is that there were no findings. It was a clean audit opinion, and the findings of the previous year's audits have been completely cleared up. So I'm very happy with the work of the staff and the results of the audit and what we were able to accomplish this past year.
And that sounds like great news, Joe. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any questions for Joe?
I would just echo what Councilor Veach said. I mean, you put a lot of work in a short amount of time, and as well as staff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, nice job. Is there a motion to, I guess, accept the fiscal year 2022?
So
audit
moved.
report? Got a motion by Counselor Veach,
Second.
Vice Mayor, seconded by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. Next is to authorize engagement letters with Malden and Jenkins to provide auditor services for fiscal year 2023. Authorize the town manager to execute the engagement letters with Malden and Jenkins to provide independent external auditor services for fiscal year 2023. Joe, anybody want to?
Okay, Joe Onzik, Director of Finance again. And as recommended by the audit committee, we're also recommending that the town council would authorize the re-engagement of Malden and Jenkins to provide the audit services again for 2023 fiscal year. The main reason is that we're so far into the season where the audit should actually be beginning now. To take the time to go out for RFP at this point would delay it too far, I believe, and they believe as well, to make that something that we should be considering now. Certainly by beginning the audit sooner, we should be able to complete it on time, on schedule this year. And then if you so desire, and if the audit committee would recommend it, then you could consider perhaps other audit firms for the next year. But for now, the recommendation is to stay with Malden and Jenkins and approve their engagement for this year.
Are there any questions for Joe?
Mr. Mayor, may I just point out, the 2 engagement letters, they both have addendums attached, and that's just the standard statutory requirements. So it's the letter and the addendum.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Anything else?
I'm just curious because I can't remember, was Malden and Jenkins the same audit firm we've had in previous years, or are they new since you came on board, Joe?
I honestly don't know. I think they were. They were, but they did go, the audit committee did go out or issue a request for proposals about a year and a half ago. And so from what had been received at that time, Malden and Jenkins were reselected again. So the audit they just now completed was the first time under that new, as a result of that new selection process. And this would be the second time they'd be used.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'd move to authorize the town manager to execute the engagement letters with Malden and Jenkins to provide independent external audit services for fiscal year 2023.
We have a motion by Counselor King,
I'll second.
seconded by Counselor Veach. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the rename of Bayside Park. Adopt a new name for Bayside Park that was chosen by public survey and includes a reference to the Veterans Memorial that is planned at the park.
Mayor, thank you. We had a survey put out on our Facebook page, website, 390 respondents, and you have the information in front of you of how that, of the four options that were put in front of on the survey. So we'll leave it up to you to discuss, and staff will follow your lead and your direction.
Well, let's just, everybody has this in front of them. So just for public, it says, help us rename Bayside Park survey results. Number one was Bayside Veterans Park with 185 responses, 47.3%. Number two was Bayside Veterans Memorial Park, 122 responses at 31.2%. Number three was Veterans Memorial at Bayside Park, 52 responses at 13.3%. And number four was Veterans Memorial Bayside Park at 31 responses, 7.9%. Counselor King, which one do you like the best?
I'm not going to go down that avenue, I guess, because it wasn't as important to me as it was as just getting this done.
Okay. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I like the public's response. I think Beach Talk Radio also did asked a similar question and got a similar response. And I'm comfortable with the public's, very comfortable with the public's selection of Bayside Veterans Park.
I also support the number one Bayside Veterans Park. Counselor Woodson?
I do as well. I'm really impressed that we got almost a 50% on that. So I really appreciate all the input that came in.
Counselor Veach?
I concur.
Mayor, if I may, we'll bring a resolution at the next meeting to formalize that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Final public comment. Anyone in the public? Yes, sir. Mr. Rude, come on up.
Mayor and council, I would just ask that we allow Mr. Rude, who is representing Friends of Little Estero Island, a little extra time to cover the three things he'd like to discuss.
Is there any objection to the request by Counselor King?
No objection.
I don't know. I have a little issue because it is public comment. Usually if someone's going to make a presentation, then it's done in advance.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I have no objection.
Is there anyone else that was going to speak at public comment? I just want to make sure if we would allow that someone else has a chance to. Go ahead.
Would you like a specific amount of more time?
Counselor King?
What do you think, Ed?
Probably 10 minutes.
Is that okay?
No objection.
I'm fine.
Again, is there anyone else that wants to speak at public comment? Okay, fire away.
Hello, everyone. Ed Rude, 8150 Estero Boulevard. I've got a couple of issues that we've just been discussing down on the south end of the island. We've had a couple meetings with the FWC. I've had several conversations also with the FWC besides the meetings. The representative from the FWC was down here again last week and met with myself and a couple of other areas of the beach where there are specific people that speak for those areas also. One of the issues on the south end, we have a proliferation of sand spurs. The condo associations have to deal with every year. They allow the vegetation to grow during the bird nesting season, obviously, to not interrupt the nesting season. At the end of nesting season, they till all the vegetation under. It's a huge field of sand spurs. And so even though the vegetation gets turned under, and you can't see it, the beach is back to white sand. You have to wear something to protect your feet. The tenants and the vacation people and the owners of the condos, they have to walk through that sand, and the sand's still full of all the spurs. So I don't think they sprayed last year, but I think year before last, the previous council, the FWC can spray that area with a herbicide and eliminate the sand spurs. And if after a few applications, a few years in a row, it pretty much eliminates them altogether. 3 years ago, the previous council gave their blessing to the FWC to allow the FWC to spray. I don't think that they sprayed last year, but when speaking to the representative of the FWC, all they're asking is confirmation through y'all by Chad or whatever the communication route is, that the town is okay with the FWC spraying to eliminate the sand spurs. There was some talk the last time this came up, I think 3 years ago, about using something that was organic rather than a commercial herbicide. The organic options all include vinegar. And after visiting with the FWC, the vinegar creates an acidic value to the soil that continues to climb every year when you use the vinegar. And so you wind up with extremely acidic sand, whereas the herbicide is an EPA-approved herbicide, and it becomes a neutral substance within a few months after its use. So anyway, I would urge the council to communicate with the FWC and agree that the spraying of the herbicide is a good idea, and it helps restore the property owner's property back to its original condition before pre-nesting. The other issue that was discussed is the Australian pines. We have a huge number of Australian pines that are sprouting on the beach, up and down the beach. I don't know how far north, but all along our area behind our neighborhood and our properties. The FWC can control the Australian pines within the critical wildlife area. They have the jurisdiction to do that, but they do not outside of the area of the critical wildlife area. And so they also would like to ask council to ask Chad to work in conjunction with them so that the town can control the Australian pines outside the critical wildlife area while the FWC controls them within the critical wildlife area. The last issue that I want to just bring up and discuss for a moment, through some of these meetings and talking with some of the property owners, the critical wildlife area has been an area that the property owners that are behind the critical wildlife area haven't been real fond of in the past. I think that's kind of goes, I think everyone knows that. Partly because of the regulation and the way the regulations have been presented to the property owners, and the lack of explanations or the lack of communication. So we're going to be having a meeting of all the property owners. We're going to try to organize a meeting of all the property owners from Island Winds down to Island's End sometime in January. And the FWC is going to come down and speak to all the property owners to try to give them some information that they haven't had in the past, so that they have a better understanding of how the critical wildlife area works. In a couple of the discussions that I've had with the property owners on my end of the island, we felt like maybe it might be a good idea to try to figure out a way to be more acceptive of the area and to have a bond, some type of a personal interest or a personal, something that would help soften the area or the designation of the area instead of just calling it the critical wildlife area all the time. It was brought up what y'all were doing about the Bayside Park and that you were adding the Veterans Memorial or the Veterans Park, or that was being worked on. Through the discussions that we had, we came up with an alternative than just calling it the critical wildlife area. There's a couple of gentlemen that have been instrumental in organizing the town and incorporating the town in the 90s. And one of them was John Mulholland. Everyone's familiar with him. And he has a stewardship award in his name that's given out every year. And the other gentleman that we feel like would be suitable is Dan Hughes. Dan Hughes is one of the founding fathers of the town. He wrote the LDC, the Comprehensive Plan, the Policies and Procedures Manual for the town. So after communicating with the FWC to see how this would take place, I got a telephone call from him late last week, and it appears that it's a pretty simple process. If the town wants to adopt a addition to the designation of the area, all they have to do is notify the FWC, and the FWC does it. So I had no idea it was that simple. Imagine that, something that simple when you're dealing with government. But anyway, the bottom line is that that's what I was told. That the town, if the town wants to adopt a name to the area, and they're happy with that, they just submit the information to the FWC, and the FWC changes it. I would like to propose to the council a very similar situation as was with Bayside Park. We were a little bit undecided about what the actual name would be. The Dan Hughes Critical Wildlife Area or the Daniel L. Hughes Critical Wildlife Area. We would like to propose that the council agree that the name is in order, and put it on the town website for the public to look at it and to get an idea what the public likes, if they like the Daniel L. Hughes Critical Wildlife Area or the Dan Hughes Critical Wildlife Area. And we, on that end of the island, everyone that I've spoke to, we would ask the council that they would do that.
All right. That it?
That's it. Any questions?
No, I think that we don't usually have questions back and forth, that as you know, with public comment. So I would suggest that you get with town staff. I don't know if this has to go through. I would assume this is probably something Murph has to look at as the town advisory committee.
And I think we can discuss when we get the councilman items as well.
We can.
I made an attempt to present all this information to Murph last week, and I was actually on the agenda. And while I was sitting there waiting for the meeting, they voted to remove me from the agenda. So I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes here, but obviously it went in one ear and out the other because there wasn't anybody here to present any of this. And so as a beachfront property owner behind the critical wildlife area, I felt like I still had that I wasn't out of bounds by bringing this up to the council myself.
Fair enough. Bill, would you like to bring this up under your items or? would you like-
Sure.
Okay. We'll discuss it on the council member.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Is there anyone else? Oh, Sarah's coming up.
Sarah Spector on behalf of Prasad Properties. I just wanted to come up and speak now because I just learned that we have 3 individuals that would like to speak in favor of this item. And I didn't know if they should come now or during the item since it's more like public comment.
I'll defer to Nancy on this. Does it make more sense?
Either way, this agenda item is not a quasi judicial one. At which point, when it is quasi judicial, we prefer to have the testimony during the public hearing. If you'd like to entertain it now, that would be fine, or you can wait. It's up to the council's discretion.
How does council feel about hearing from it now under public comment or in this or during the actual, it's under attorney items. So
I think it's the next item up.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, after.
Well, after I'd prefer to have it during the actual item. I think it's more
I would
conducive
too.
to conversation.
Jermaine.
That's fine.
Okay,
Mhm.
we'll have it during the discussion. Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will close final public comment. Town manager's items.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, councilors. Had obviously an event yesterday or overnight. The worst seemed to be sand-wise down at Times Square, down at the North Estero Boulevard. So we were out yesterday cleaning up, and we've got staff still cleaning today, doing some of the housekeeping and getting it in better shape. The street signs project continues. I think we're pretty much almost all the way along Estero. Going to be getting into in the neighborhoods a little bit now. The side streets, I think the mayor's streets. That's such a big sign. Maybe they just had trouble getting it on a piece of metal, but that should be up soon. I've noticed about 3 that weren't over the weekend that weren't finished. They seem to be working overnight. I don't ever see them during the daytime, so that's kudos to them. I guess that's a lot less traffic. And also I noticed the barrels and the dividers were removed down by Margaritaville overnight last night. So that's a good, opens that up a little bit. As far as that light goes, we'll work a little bit with FDOT to see if we can't get a trip switch or a wire into the Crescent Street side when you pull up, so you're not sitting there waiting for it to cycle, and that can move that traffic. Not a lot, but it should move a little better. Frankie's going to talk a little bit in just a minute about Tier 1 and the trailers. We've been in touch with FPL actually a couple weeks ago. They reached out to us to have a meeting just to bring the vice president out and then talk, and it got canceled today. But they asked me a question. I said, well, one of the things we're really trying to get some light on the subject is Old San Carlos. Well, the next day I get an email that they're going to bring out some solar lights, and I just got an email a little while ago that said there'll be, I believe it was 17 or some number will be delivered by the end of the week and installed next week along Old San Carlos. They are solar related, but it should help light that area. I know Jeff's been working on and staff's been working on getting some portable lighting be put down in that area as well for the New Year's Eve event, but we continue to work to get that accomplished.
Now, the solar lights meant to be temporary. I think.
They can be. Of course, I think we need to look at that as a long-term solution possibly, because if we ever get in this situation again, we can remove the temporary lights, solar lights, permanent solar lights, take them away, store them, and then bring them back the next day after the event and have light immediately instead of it, 14, 15 months later, still waiting to get light. It's a quicker way to do things, and solar energy is going to be with us for a while. So we're looking at some of that in the park. We've got one solar light that we put in the parking lot behind Surf Shop, whatever that just opened. Look at that. That's one we put back there about a month now, and it lights that parking lot up a little bit. So just take a look at that, and it's something similar to that type. We've also got a couple of lights going to be put in Bayside Park. I believe 3 maybe this week. So not sure, but we're working to get that accomplished as well, to put a little more light on that subject. We also need, and Jeff can come up now, the fireworks show is going to be pretty spectacular. It really is. It's going to rival some fireworks shows that I've experienced in the past. And we've had a private donor that's donated money, but we just need you as a council to approve the fireworks show and to approve closing the bridge during that event. Jeff can expound on that.
Yeah, Jeff Hauge, Cultural Parks and Rec Director. What Andy's referring to is we talked about the fireworks going on. What FDOT needs is the official okay from you guys about closing the bridge. That's all they're waiting for in the FDOT permit. So if we can hopefully get that done, we can send that over to FDOT so we can close the bridge. I think hopefully just a minor technicality on their part. I did send them the minutes of when we talked about the fireworks, but they said it didn't reference the road closure or the bridge closure. So just also, oh, you have a question?
Oh, I know. I think you're going to say it, so you go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So like town manager said, we have had numerous anonymous donors to our fireworks this year. And actually it's great because we usually have a budget in it for a fireworks show or special events, and we're not going to have to use any of that money or very little of it for the fireworks this year. They went above and beyond, the donors did. When I talked to Zambelli Fireworks, they said, this is the amount that would make a great show. And then we almost doubled that through the donors. So it is going to be, they said, one of the best shows in Southwest Florida. They're going to light it off. They're going to bring some of the bigger ones in. It's all going to be set to music. So if it says, I know it's Valentine's Day reference, but if it says heart in the, if a firework goes up and it has a heart in the song, it'll say heart too. So it'll be really good. They're actually throwing that music part in. Just because of how much the donors have spent on the fireworks. So it's just going to be a great thing. I know there'll be a little bit going on at Times Square, but I mean, it's just going to be great. And we're not going to have to close the beach this year since it is on a barge out from the pier. But the show is just going to be, I can't wait for it. It's going to be spectacular. It's going to be huge. It'll be 20 minutes of nonstop big fireworks going up. So it's good.
I did, again, just some clarity, Jeff, because this is sort of breaking news, if you will, because a lot of folks thought that because of all the events that have occurred the last year and a half, that things were going to be pretty subdued this year. It sounds like it's going to be the complete opposite of that. A, and B, it sounds like these donors donated the money specifically for the fireworks. Is that correct?
Correct. They donated it specifically for the fireworks to go towards that. And yeah, it's going to be that the point of them doing that and having it big is because of everything we've gone through in the last year and a half, and they want it to be just spectacular for all the residents. So yes, it's just the opposite of that. It's going to be bigger and better than we've had in the past, and they're already starting to raise some money for New Year's as well. And they want this to be the destination to come watch the fireworks at. And we're going to try to make it happen every time.
And it's my understanding that the fireworks will be lit from a barge that'll be just relatively close to the pier. Is that how it?
Yeah, I think they said about 1,000 feet off, something like around that. So all the permitting is getting all in. I think we're waiting on the fire department right now. We got the Coast Guard permit. We've got the sheriff's office and everything. So it's well on its way. We're hoping to do something down at Times Square with our Parks and Rec staff, some activity going on down there. And then there'll be some concerts down at Bayside as well for that day. The concerts will end about 10:30, and then everyone can walk on down or just watch them from there. It should be a big show.
Can you disclose how much was donated?
Upwards of $55,000. He said a good show would be about 30,000. So this one, I can't say what he told me this is going to look like because it's profanity, but he said it's going to be great.
So now I understand too, when you do a barge, it's a little more complicated, right? Because you have to have Coast Guard or somebody patrolling and keeping the boats from getting in the fall zone. And
yeah, Coast Guard I believe will have one boat out there. Zambelli also hired part of their scope is hiring, I think it's called a Sea Watch or something like that they have to have. I think it's upwards of 4 boats that are roaming around to make sure no one gets too close.
In their donation, that covered the cost of the added Lee County Sheriff's Office patrol that's going to be they're going to need down there.
Correct.
So
yeah,
they all and they have chosen to stay anonymous, correct?
There's been a number of donors. It's not just one, but there's been a number of them, and then they have asked to stay anonymous.
Well, we certainly thank them. I will make a motion to approve what is the FDOT?
Fireworks and
Yeah,
the
the fireworks and the
show.
FDOT
So-
permit.
Fireworks and
Yeah.
FDOT.
I think it's a motion to approve closure of the bridge and fireworks on December 31st. Would that be
Correct.
correct?
And / January 1st. It'll
I
go
will
through.
make a motion as to what our town attorney has so eloquently stated.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion
Boom.
carries unanimously. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, before Frankie gives an update, I want to recognize Jason Freeman. Jason has just completed his Master's of Public Administration, and he graduated on Saturday with that. And then I woke him up early Sunday morning to come in here and shovel sand. So congratulations, Jason. One of our hometown employees from Fort Myers Beach.
Never thought you'd be pushing the shovel after you got that, did you?
Most importantly, beach school graduate.
All right, I guess we're going to be talking a little bit about Tier 1. It seems to be the buzz. Andy and I and a few other town members had the pleasure of talking to Go FMB several weeks ago, and that was brought up in one of their comments. They had asked at that time several of the people about a list of the streets, when they would be done, so on and so forth. We've had a kind of a turnover in our employee base, so to speak. And Tier 1 has kind of not got tossed aside, but tossed back to Tetra Tech, who are the master planners of the program. We had a meeting with them last week. Eric Fay, who was the co-author with a former employee on the Tier 1, has said that he's more than willing to put together a list and an approximate date. The date seems to be in question only because we're waiting for the SRF to give us final notification to continue with this, which they will grant it. We're just waiting.
SRF being State Revolving Loan Fund.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
We're just waiting for that final notification. The vendor's he's already procured his materials. And I can tell you, like Curlew, Seminole, Starling, Bahia Villa, those are the streets that have been regrouped. So when that initial announcement came out and they had these groups, I think like 4 or 5 streets all the way down to like groups E, that's all going to be reworked. We're taking all the low-lying streets first and working backwards from the list. So currently Tetra Tech is going to be a manager in charge of the operation. And we hope to kick it off by mid-January if everything comes back with the documentation from SRF. Like I said, the vendor's all ready to go. In fact, the same vendor is going to be doing a side project for us, which is the replacement and installation of duckbills in the downtown area from Crescent, 1st and 3rd.
So question on that. If it's the same Andrew site work that's doing the duckbills as
Yes, sir.
well as the
Yes, sir.
side streets? If we're waiting on funding for them to start, I mean, what kind of dollar amount are we talking about? They're waiting to, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way through funding and if it doesn't make Joe's life any more complicated to, as opposed to waiting to mid-January to get started, if there's a way to front load this, knowing we've got the funding coming to be able to start. I don't know if it can be done or not. I'm just trying to see if we can.
The funding
speed it up
is
a
in
little bit.
place, Mayor. That's not the issue. It was just the final handing over of the documents, basically. It just kind of coincided with the holidays. That's kind of like our nemesis right now. We are hoping to get this all done and gone by December 1st. So they were going to originally start this last week in December, and that just got pushed back another week. That's the only thing that happened there. So it was basically a transference of documents. Like I said, Andrew's site work has been raring to go since they were selected back in November. At first, we were worried about some logistical problems on their end. We since all worked out that. Currently, between myself and a few other people, including the town manager, we're going to be working hand in hand with Tetra Tech, not only to be an engineer on that side, but also give us an on-site engineer to oversee the project once it does get started. So we're up and going here within the next week or so with the duckbills, followed by, once they finish that, they're going to run right back into the Tier 1 program.
So next week, you're planning on starting installing the duck?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
So just to be clear, Frankie, and it sounds like it's a work in progress. The list itself with the timeline, the Tetra Tech is working on that list right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The timeline is just going to be iffy because once you get into a street, I mean, we may say that they're going to be on a certain street, the second week in January, and they may not show up there until the third or fourth week.
Right.
Just because of what they get into on that street.
But the priority list.
But priority list is going to be our low-lying streets. That was supposed to be right from the get-go when this thing was first drafted, and it just was not communicated to the public that way.
No, and I got you. But that list of low-lying streets and that priority list, that's currently being worked on and will be released in the next week or
Yes,
so.
sir. As soon as I have that available of the streets that are going to be in that first kickoff phase, that will be posted on our town webpage.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Where are we in the discussion? I know we had talked to the contractor when they were in here at the end of November about running these projects or these groups, these tiers concurrently. Has there been any more discussion on that as far as their ability to do it? He said he would look into it, but
Yes.
haven't heard if there's.
Yes, sir. So with these high priority streets, depending on what they get into in that first phase, once they get past that, the low-lying streets, because of elevation and the way to pitch those drains, when they get into our regular scheduled streets, so to speak, they will be able to kick off simultaneous streets at one time.
Okay. Any questions for Frankie on that? Did that, let's see if anybody's here that was there. They left. Okay. So if you can let us know or let the public know.
We
as soon
will,
as
we
possible
will not
which
only let
streets.
you, the elected officials, know, but we're also going to be putting out a notice on our webpage as well with the first streets and how we're potentially going to group them from there on down.
All right. Very good.
And I'd just like to, one little caveat to that. I understand the frustration of, being promised in the past that your street was going to be done or it was going to be put at the top of the list and it never got done. Just because you're in that first group does not mean that we're not going to do your street. We tried to really look long and hard with Tetra Tech on streets that were at or below grade or had no swale coverage or swales that were affected by high tide. We've tried to look at this from several different angles. And again, we are doing our due diligence on hopefully trying to get the most problematic areas on the island treated first.
And I just, point out to the public that it's not like there's a simple solution because in your low lying, there's not a lot of slope to get rid of rainwater. And so the more you try to drain the rainwater out of low lying areas, the more likely you're going to get inundation from the saltwater. I know down on Seminole and Sterling, I was down there during the king tide and the water was over the seawall. And the only thing our project would help with would help the water go away faster once the tide finally drops.
That is correct. And unfortunately, with the Dahlia, we witnessed not only did we have storm surge, but we also had a king tide that very same night. Here with this last storm that came through, we had high tide at a very not conducive time of day. It was right as the winds were really ramping up directly out of the west, blowing the water back. If you recall, the day before this last storm hit, on the news, we had drastic low tide where you could go out quite in the bay. Or even into the Gulf, and it exposed a lot of the sand. So it's a barrier island. And unfortunately, sometimes these are the things that we have to deal with, but we are doing our best to try to alleviate what we can. Trailer update. We've got trailers rolling down I-75 as we speak. They should be on our property and starting to install here by the end of the week. Again, we had a great communication meeting with the county as far as tapping into the sewer and finding out some information from them. And it's a nice collaborative effort between parks, public works, utilities, town staff in general on getting this done. Andy and Jeff were out there staking out the boundaries of our new home for the next few years. And so we should all be raring and ramped up to go. The new trailers, as they come in, they're going to be staged through the Bay Oaks property until they can get on the pad and be put in for installation. So if you see stuff kind of laying out there wondering what's going on, it takes about 5 to 7 days to put like the quad trailer, the 4 trailers together. And after that, they'll be moving along to the other trailers subsequently.
So along those lines, we are planning, and our plans change, to have our next meeting in that quad trailer. It takes 5 to 7 days. They should be putting that together next week. Electricity and water and sewer come concurrently, so we're working to that end to get that accomplished, but we will keep you posted as the progress continues.
Anything else?
Town Hall will be closed Friday and Monday in observance of the Christmas holiday, and I believe the next Friday for New Year's Day. That's it.
Town attorney items.
Thank you. The next and I believe the last action item on your agenda is a proposed settlement agreement with Prasad Properties of Florida. This is a proposed settlement agreement concerning several code enforcement liens and pending code cases that have been discussed for a long, long time. And this settlement agreement is intended to be kind of a comprehensive finality to these issues. It's intended to be comprehensive, promote compliance, and it does, as a settlement, as all settlement agreements do, it is a compromise. So with that said, I wanted to go over some of the terms to highlight those, and then I'm going to defer to staff to provide you with some additional information regarding the current status of compliance. So the various properties are identified in the whereas clauses. The settlement amount is $250,000, as well as a good faith payment of $500,000, which can be in a monetary amount or in the form of a bond. That would be deposited with Russell and Andrus into their trust account. Should you agree with this settlement agreement. So as soon as that money and the bond is placed there, we would have a copy of the bond, which we would review to make sure that it adequately protects the town. That would have to be deposited into that escrow account within 30 days, which would be on or before January the 17th. And then upon receipt of a letter from the escrow agent to the town manager stating that the funds and the bond has been placed, the town manager would then direct inspection of the properties to again ensure compliance. And if no alleged violation exists, the town manager would then direct the city clerk to record the release of lien within 14 days. However, if a violation is suspected, the code enforcement officer would issue a courtesy notice to have the violation corrected, and then a copy to the escrow agent notifying the escrow agent that there is a violation. And if the courtesy notice is ignored and there's no correction made, then we would proceed forward to the with a notice of violation, and we would go before the code enforcement special magistrate. And in the event the special magistrate found that there was a violation, that would put the $500,000 bond at risk. The town manager has indicated to me that he would then subsequently do periodic inspections of the property to make sure that there is compliance with the terms of the settlement agreement. And that task, I believe, has been assigned to Frankie. And Frankie, I think, has some information regarding the current status of compliance of the various properties.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. As far as the parking lot properties on North Estero, Mr. Prasad is in full compliance with everything that we have asked him from the town. As far as the properties farther down the island, I believe the old Junkanoo property, we had asked that he post that as no parking, private property, and to put a proper construction fence around the pilings of the existing restaurant that's still standing. And he has met all those conditions.
And so the Junkanoo properties include the two houses, right?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you had speakers.
Yeah, I'm just making sure there was no other questions here.
I have a question. I'm supportive of finding a compromise on this issue, but I just had a question on compliance. That that giant tree stump near the parking lot, is that going to be resolved before the settlement comes into full compliance?
The one on the beachfront property, I believe it's on the other side of Mr. Prasad's property.
No, this is where it's right next to his restaurant, right next to the parking lot, his old restaurant. It's a giant tree stump.
I'm
I'll-
sure.
I'll- maybe Terry
yeah.
can address it when it comes
I'm
up.
sure we could reach some
Yep.
agreement on that.
Yep.
Yes. He's been more than receptive on all accounts.
Great. I just, that was something we talked about for a while, but I'm supportive of where we're headed here.
Are there any other questions for staff? Before we, all right, who wants to come up first? Sarah?
Sarah Spector on behalf of Prasad Properties. To your point, Vice Mayor, I just learned that a DEP permit would be needed to remove that tree stump. So he was waiting until reconstruction and to remove that tree stump when he gets the approval from DEP for that.
So forgive me, you just learned that it required a DEP permit?
I just learned it. Mr. Prasad knew that.
And then so application will be made for that permit once the settlement occurs then, or just trying to understand process here?
Sure, I'm going to have
That's fine.
him address.
Terry Prasad. So the special exception required us to remove the Australian pine, which was the large tree that was there. We cut it out. The stump still remains, but the invasive species that the special exception required us to remove is gone. So there's no Australian pine there. To get that stump, because it's so rooted in there, we'll have to dig out that whole area to remove it. And talking to Chad, we'll need a DEP permit to do that. It's not required as part of our special exception, but we'll have to remove it. So when we do our redevelopment, that's when we're planning on taking it out.
So forgive me, Terry. So just procedurally, you're saying separate from the settlement, you're going to make application for the permit to remove that?
Yeah.
But it's not part of the settlement?
It's not part of the settlement. It was not part of the requirement of our agreement, getting the special exception for the permit.
But here on the record, you're pledging to go ahead and make
Yes,
application
yes,
for that permit
yeah.
to remove the stump?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
be clear, Jim, I'm getting from him that when he rebuilds, then he'll remove the stump.
So when we start the reconstruction of the area, yeah.
Don't you know that the stump has to go one way or the other, right? So
Yes, yeah,
Why,
yeah.
why do we have to wait till?
Because the DEP permit takes 6 months to get it out there. So, and we're hoping once, to start bringing on our permits here shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, I just have a question. What happened to the idea, and I remember hearing this, I don't know, a couple of years ago, that that stump was going to be turned into some kind of art, something?
Yes, so when we had it originally, when the restaurant was there, we were gonna carve it out into a dolphin. I'm still hoping to save that stump when we take it out and carve it into something to put back in our new reconstruction.
Okay.
And then just for clarification purposes, I wanted to go through the property that is covered by this, because I think that in speaking with Nancy a short time ago, there is some thought that this might cover the Junkanoo property itself. But the way I have it described is we're talking about the property down at Times Square and then the two homes next to Junkanoo, because they were part of a settlement agreement when those homes were built. One of them was built past the coastal construction line. So there was a settlement agreement. It's since been pulled back. They have active permits there. So they're working on that. There's some items that they're waiting on, windows and elevators, but we'll get that done. But this does not cover the Junkanoo property itself because there was nothing outstanding there. There was no fines, no liens, and no potential fines as there was with the settlement agreement on the two homes. So if we wanted to enlarge it, I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that it does not currently cover the Junkanoo property.
So before you move on.
Yes.
So Frankie, you said that securing the properties, what properties were you talking about down there? Just the
These were
two
just in
homes, or-
discussions after we had talked with Sarah, Nancy, and Terry, just concerns that the town had. And so we had asked him if he would take care of those as well, and he had done that, which was the people parking illegally on that Junkanoo property. And then also, make sure that was posted. And then also the construction fence that was up there, he had one in place, but it had fallen down. And we asked him to make sure that it was resecured, just for safety's sake.
I guess I didn't notice this morning on the drive. So it's up again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, Sarah.
Oh, no. So I just wanted to clarify that the only properties that were addressed in here were those that either had pending liens, fines, or proposed fines, and the Junkanoo property was not one of those. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Sarah. And that is in the whereas clause. It was just kind of the property straps are identified there, but then just collectively referred to as Junkanoo.
But those strap numbers are for the two homes.
Correct.
Not the Junkanoo property itself.
Correct.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so not particularly clear. So the Junkanoo property does not include Junkanoos.
It was just for ease of reference as to what homes we were talking about.
Right.
So yes.
And are those, that's a different LLC, I would assume, Junkanoo Properties? The
Mm-mm.
homes are different than the Junkanoo itself?
No, they're not.
Not right now, no. They have different strap numbers, but the ownership is the same as it is for Times Square.
Okay. So I
These-
guess I'm
yeah.
trying to understand why we are excluding something out of that within any potential fines under the bond agreement, why that property is being excluded.
We had started with just the Times Square property. And then there was a question whether the settlement agreement on the two homes, if any fines had been levied under that settlement agreement, because there is the potential for fines. Because there's the potential for fines, we added those properties in so that any potential fines, pending fines, and any liens would go away. So that property wasn't going to be included until we learned that there was some concern that their settlement agreement contemplated fines, which have never been levied. But this will make that go away as well in that part of the settlement agreement. But as of right now, the compliance section refers to the parking lot and keeping that in compliance with his LDO that he's received and has a certificate of completion on.
So why doesn't the compliance part match the description of what's being waived for fines and liens? Because I noticed that in the section where you're talking about, like you said, the two properties, I mean, the houses and the two Times Square properties are the ones that get the liens dismissed and the fines dismissed. But then the only criteria for the good faith payment is the operation of the parking lot. And some of the fines that were accrued or proposed were beyond just that parking lot. There was also the beach chairs and the restaurant. There was, like you said, some things with the settlement agreement with the other house. So would you be open to making the good faith payment restrictions match the properties that are being waived, having their liens and fines waived?
You may recall that I've come before you a few other times because the Junkanoo properties have been under contract for some time. Our hope is just to get the liens removed, or yes, the liens that are recorded, since they apply to all property owned by the same entity, is to get those liens removed so he can sell those properties. So I don't know that he'd be opposed to, so long as he's.
I think it's really fair if he
Mhm.
if he sells the property, any property, then he's no longer liable for what happens in the property because he doesn't have control over it. I don't
Right.
see that as being a particular issue. If they do so quickly, then it's kind of a non-issue. But then Times Square, there's other potential violations that could happen that have a history of happening that I think it'd be good to include in this agreement. And likewise, I think that if Terry decides to within a year, and I don't know what the likelihood of this, if he decides to sell all these properties in the year, I would also be open to having a clause in here saying that the money's returned to him in that case. If he doesn't own any properties that are a part of this, then he should get his money back.
Sure. The only thing I would ask, because I know there was some concern with including the Junkanoo property. There's never been the Junkanoo restaurant property proper. There's never been any violations there. There's no fines pending, no liens. So I would hesitate to bring that in to this property.
But I'm going by the referral in the whereas, where the whereas saying Junkanoo's properties is the two houses.
It's the two houses,
And
right?
and the Sunset Grill are the two properties on Times Square.
Right. And staying in compliance on those.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. For so long as he owns them, yes.
Right. And I think, yeah, true, to be fair. And I don't know
Yes.
if it's implied in the law that if he doesn't own the property anymore, that he's not liable for any of fines and
Well,
liens that happen.
I don't have any opposition to adding that language in there. And I think then it becomes self-executing so that if he is no longer in ownership of the properties, then the settlement agreement is just moot. So I think we have agreement to add some additional language. That
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
As to the properties in here that are identified as the Junkanoo properties.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe we should say Junkadoo residential properties.
That's fine.
And I think too, the good faith payment, making that any violations that happen at the properties that we're describing.
Going through that compliance process that's laid out.
Right.
Yes.
So I just have a question and clarification. So the parking lot at Times Square, I mean, so for so long, we said it was an illegal parking lot, or was illegal on the same parallel path as in non-compliance, or was it illegal and is now legal, brought into legal, or can you explain where we stand with the parking lot?
Absolutely. Back when there was the Sunset Grill next door, he was renting, oh, I'm sorry, there was an allegation that he was allowing people that were going to the restaurant and then just anybody to use the parking lot. For that, you need a special exception to allow for shared use of a parking lot. He had obtained a special exception that had requirements conditions. That was what he was not in compliance with, was those conditions. He's no longer operating it as a shared parking lot because there's no restaurant there. So it's only being used by the public for public parking. And so he obtained a limited review development order with certain conditions, and that's what he is now in compliance with.
Yeah. So Karen, I've kind of gone through this. The special exception was back in 2020. And then, but he had to get the LDO, execute the LDO, get it approved. Then he was in compliance. And that didn't happen. He didn't apply for it until recently. And he's just now.
So now it's
now
in
it's
compliance.
in compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Sarah?
I think we did have a
Sarah?
few. Oh, yes.
I just want to, I don't want to belabor this point, but I'm just thinking through this for people to think I'm nuts about this stump. It's not just any stump. It's a monstrous stump right in the heart of Times Square. Is there any way we can build in a timeline for that as part of compliance into the agreement, and in the sense that, and I'm happy to give the time it takes. I know it takes a lot of time to get the permit, but can we build in something that just says that, that stump will be gone within 6 months or something to that effect? I want to be reasonable, but that stump's got to go. I mean, what do you think, Terry? Is there some way we could do?
Come on up, Terry. Come.
Yeah, it'll take about 6 months to go through the process to get the permit.
You
So,
mind
I
just
mean,
putting in a whereas, just that stump will be removed within 6 months or something like that?
Well, we'll have to put like within the next year. So as quickly as we get the permit, then we'll implement it.
yeah,
But the permit will take up to 6 months is what the DEP permits are
Okay,
taking.
if we could build something, just some kind of language into that, just it doesn't have to be just something so folks know that the stump will be
Yes,
addressed. Yeah.
Perhaps in paragraph 4, where it talks about compliance, we could maybe add some language there.
Has the permit been applied for yet?
For the
With D-
DEP permit? No, like I said, we were planning on doing that when we do our redevelopment order.
So maybe we say that the permit has to be applied for within 30 days and the stump removed within 30 days of receiving the permit from the DEP?
I'm comfortable with that.
Does that work?
The only problem I have is that, this kind of the shade of the special exception he had where he had, I think, 60 days to apply for an LDO and it took 3 years.
I think under what Counselor Whitson said, they've got 30 days upon signing the agreement to make application and then, right?
And if not, then he's out of compliance.
And I would also say that, there's considerable expense in applying for a DEP permit. It's not a trivial thing.
I'm not saying it is. He's agreeing to that, right? Do you not think he should, are you?
No, I'm
opposed to
just saying, I just don't want to trivialize it because it is, it's not just applying for a permit like you would in the town to build something. You've got to, just your ducks in a row and usually hire people to apply for you.
And I think he's willing to do that, right? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm following you.
I'm just trying to, let you know that if he's agreeing to it, it's a considerable concession.
And I appreciate that. Yeah. But the stump has been discussed for years now. So I think it's good that we're getting some clarification on it.
And Mr. Veach is correct. It does take considerable work to get that applied for with the holiday season. I think it'd probably be best 60 days for the application and then 30 days after we receive the permit to have it removed.
Okay, that's fine.
Maybe some carefully aimed fireworks.
Maybe we can host the fireworks in it.
Yeah. Did you want to have anything else to add, Terry? Did you want to, I thought you said there was 3 people here that wanted to.
Hi, I'm Kathy Stefanski, representing the Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce. Jackie asked me to step in her place today. We just wanted to express our gratitude to Terry for allowing us to have our Roxy trailer there in his parking lot for free, rent-free since the hurricane. It has brought a lot of people down to Times Square. It's given out a lot of information, and it's been very generous of him to allow us to use it. And we just wanted to let everyone know that we're grateful. So thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, Council, and thank you for everything you do. My name is Natalie Stickland. I am a glass artist and a vendor currently at 1028 Estero Boulevard. And I've been at Fort Myers Beach for more than 20 years. Like many here, Hurricane Ian devastated my world. In one day, I had lost my home, my car, and my livelihood. Needless to say, I needed a chance to begin again, and Terry was one of the few people offering me an opportunity to do just that. He was one of the first to begin cleaning up Times Square, along with Mr. Primo, and all that I can speak of is what I witnessed from my perspective, which was total devastation turning into a fighting chance. Terry cleared away much of the rubble behind me and put pavers down for me to open my kiosk as well as others. And as I recall, we were the second business to open in Times Square, which was just 3 short months after Ian. Terry also voluntarily cleaned up the adjacent property with heavy equipment. Since then, I have a great relation working with Terry, and he's being proven attentive and reliable. It is my opinion that he appreciates diversity and uniqueness in small business, which I also appreciate and consider valuable. I am grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Terry, did you want to say anything else?
As you all know, this has been going on for way too long. It's been the pledge of the council members to get these matters resolved. And I think this is the opportunity for us to get it resolved. I've gone above and beyond to create an agreement that I don't agree with, but if it's what it takes to get it done, it's time for us to get it done. Thank you.
Well, that was a little concerning, quite honestly, Terry. I mean, I remember at the LPA hearing when there was discussion about this and at the council meetings, you kind of did the same thing. You agreed, but then at the very end, you said, I don't agree with it, but I'll do what it takes to get it done. And that has led us to where we're at now. So it's a little concerning that you said that to me, because you said it in the past, and it's been 4 or 5 years that we've been dealing with this, both on our end and on your end. And I think we all want to get to the resolution that we can all move forward. As I think you well know, it's just been a matter of compliance. Everybody, as long as everybody's in compliance, following the same rules, we can all move on and continue on. So I'm a little taken back that you said that at the very end.
Let me rephrase that. When we went in for the special exceptions for the parking lot, the LPA came in. I invited everyone from the LPA, Mr. Harholt, and you guys looked at the parking lot. That parking lot has been existing since the 1960s, and it's always served the same purpose as it did from then to the time we bought it. And we just continued operating it the way it was when we bought it. The town came in and says you can use a dual-purpose parking lot. Well,
Yeah, I guess I don't want to relitigate
Yeah,
this
yeah.
all over again. I guess what I'm saying are simple things like the fencing for the seawall. I remember that was one. The stump, the tree was another. Simple things that you agreed to, and then at the end you said I don't agree with it, and then it's been years where it hasn't been taken care of until recently when you've applied for the land development order and have got it approved. So again, I'm not going to make a huge issue out of it, but it was a little concerning to hear you say that, knowing what happened after the last time you said the exact same thing.
Well, what I was referring to was the monetary settlement, not doing the work or making sure everything is in compliance. But as you know, it's a written document and it's not going to go away. So,
Understand. But just
all right.
thanks.
I just kind of, to kind of talk back at, some of the things that Dan's saying. I looked through the settlement agreement and, you were obligated to file, said applicant must apply for a limited development order within 90 days of the approval of the special exception. That day would have been June 2020. Now, you never applied for an LDO. So they would, for like 3 years, and there was fines on this. So, I understand that you're feeling like you're somewhat persecuted, but you agreed to this and you didn't apply for the LDO.
But we reverted back the parking lot for our customers only, which is what we could do. If we want to use a shared parking lot, we had to get the LDO. If we want to keep it just for our customers only, we didn't need to apply for the LDO. The main reason why we didn't apply for the LDO is because at the end of the agreement, they put in that the parking lot cannot start to function until 8:30 a.m. As you know, that's the only parking lot in Times Square. And all our service trucks for all the businesses in Times Square came into that parking lot. With the previous administration, if that parking lot started taking vehicles at 6 a.m. for the beer delivery and the food delivery, I would have been ticketed again. So that's the reason we didn't apply for it.
But I'll also just reiterate that, you didn't apply for it within the time, and actually the town, in issuing you an LDO years after this deadline expired, they were bending over backwards, I think, to help you come into compliance.
Yes,
So I think that,
and I must say the staff has been great to work with. Sarah Prost has been nothing more than spectacular, and so has Frankie lately. So I'm very thankful now that we have a very great staff, and they're working with us. If we had a staff that worked with me back in the 2-3 years ago, we wouldn't have been here. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Question for you, Nancy. The way this is worded, I understand if hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, if history repeats itself and you fall out of compliance for whatever reason, how does that work going forward? Obviously, the $500,000 is then, if it goes through the magistrate, does all of the things it has to do, it goes through the process. Where does it go from there? Do we start this process all over again where fines could start accruing because it has been ruled on by the special magistrate? I just don't want to go down the same road that you've been on and the town has been on for the last 5-6 years over something. So I guess.
So the $500,000 bond or the money, then the escrow agent is directed to give that money to the town. So you will get the $500,000 upon a finding of a violation.
But okay, so they find, let's say the special magistrate says, yes, they're not in compliance, therefore the money comes to the town. Do we start this whole thing of the daily fines accruing every day after that ruling and start this process all over again? Is kind of what I'm getting at. Again, I'm hoping this does not happen. I hope that we don't have to ever spend a lot of time like we've had over the past several years to do this, but
I don't think that your the settlement agreement doesn't address that situation.
so it would just be
We would
business as
start,
usual.
we could start from scratch
Okay.
at that point because the settlement agreement will have run its course because we will have received the 500,000. We will have received the 250,000 within 30 days. So it kind of becomes a moot document.
Okay. And the other question I have is there's been a lot of dollar amounts thrown around as to what is potentially owed, what's not owed, what has gone through the magistrate process, what hasn't. You know, there's been numbers thrown out in the millions. And I know that I've asked Becky to look into, because I know there's going to be people out there that are looking at this, should it get agreed upon to move forward with it, they're going to say, well, the town gave, you know, let them off of $2 million worth of fines. But can you talk a little bit as to what you found in your research, you and Becky, in where we are as far as fines and how it relates to what the settlement amount is?
I don't have the exact number. I don't know if Frankie or Andy does, but what I will tell you though is that just because you have a fine or you have a lien, it's not money that you have in your hands. Because you have to, let's say the situation of a fine, you have to complete the code enforcement process. At that point, it becomes a lien, but you still don't have cash. So that lien then has to be foreclosed, which is another proceeding. So there's more delay, and there's no 100% guarantee that you will actually get the amount of the lien, because it has to be determined by a court of law that it is a valid enforceable lien. So you have a time issue and you have potential risk of having that particular lien declared unenforceable or invalid.
And I think you kind of went around, you kind of danced around it, but I think you got to the point where I was trying to get you to hopefully say is that a lot of this money that's been thrown out there, whatever those numbers are, hasn't been through that entire process yet. So it hasn't gone to a lien.
The
action.
fines have not, correct. But even those liens, I can't right now tell you that you're going to be able to collect on those, because it's a process through the court. We have to show that the process was correctly done. Do we have records? Do we have staff people to testify? It may be a challenge. I'm not saying that they are invalid, but I'm saying that it's going to be time consuming. And at the end of the day, we don't have certainty as to how much we would recover.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Weren't some of those fines illegally levied as well?
Again, that's going to be a factual determination as to the validity of the fine. And I can't tell you that. I don't have the documentation to attest to that.
I think, again, I'll say I think the important, and I think what the mission was for everybody involved from day one was to get Terry to come into compliance with what you agreed to do. And staff is telling us now that you have come into compliance, and there is something there that, you know, should history repeat itself, you know, the town will be compensated for that. And then we start this process all over again, which hopefully we don't have to do. So we'll bring it back to council for some discussion, and then we'll decide.
I would just say to your point, Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to phrase this appropriately so the town attorney can concur. The aggregate fine numbers that have been bantied about over the years, those fine numbers, as large as some of those, some of that speculation was, is it fair to say, Nancy, that those numbers are in dispute?
They would be challenged, yes.
Yeah. And so this is a compromise.
Absolutely, it's a compromise.
And
yes.
so we remove that litigation risk by
That
coming
is
to a compromise here today.
correct. Because trying to those liens, trying to enforce those liens, there is a process. And at the end of the day, a court could find that they were invalid for whatever reason. So there is a risk there that the town would be managing through this settlement agreement and compromise.
That's why I think the concept of a global settlement is so important. And so I would support this compromise. Nobody's happy. That's generally an indication that a good compromise has been found. And I would support us moving forward with the compromise.
Any other discussion?
You know, I kind of look, and I've talked at length with Becky and Nancy about it, but, you know, I look at the settlement agreement and with the special exception, both of them have clauses in there of $500 per day per incident fines appealable to the special magistrate in those. Now, I've got kind of not very positive interpretations from Becky about the validity of this. But I look at just those two fines themselves, that's $1,000 a day over the course of 3 to 5 years. So I think it's a fairly generous settlement, but I think with all that's been going through, I would support it just to get this done and be able to start a clean slate. And hopefully Terry will keep his nose clean and we don't get this situation going forward.
Okay. John,
So-
you have anything else?
No.
Just to summarize, I've heard 3 possible changes to the settlement agreement. One was one that I suggested, just Junkadoo residential property, so there's no misunderstanding that the commercial property is included. Adding those residential properties to the good faith requirement in paragraph 3. And then also the issue concerning the tree stump, having that removal, 60 days to apply, 30 days to have it removed upon receipt of the permit.
Sarah, Terry, does that sound what you come on up? Does that sound like what you heard as well?
Yes, that matches with the notes that I took.
Okay. You okay with it, Terry?
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve or deny the settlement offer?
Move
So
to
moved.
approve. Second.
Got a motion by
Okay, that is a motion to approve. with-
Motion to approve.
as
With,
amended.
as
As
amended.
a motion
three
to
amendments.
approve as amended with the 3 items that were discussed at the meeting.
We got a motion by Counselor Woodson, seconded by Counselor King. Any other discussion?
Just a quick question to Nancy. So then this approval you'll edit the document and then that's enough instruction for the mayor to sign it and execute it? Or is it to come back to council?
No, that should be adequate. I thought the motion, you can provide direction to the mayor to sign,
Okay.
so it doesn't have to come back, so it can be a done deal.
So I'll amend the motion to approve with the 3 items that were discussed and the signature
Authorize the mayor.
and to authorize the mayor to sign once these changes are made.
I'll amend my second as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? I just want to say, it looks like this is going to finally come to an end, hopefully. So everybody can move forward. We certainly hope that we don't have to go through this again and wish you the best of luck. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. There you go. Council member, anything else, Nancy?
No, sir.
No?
Thank you.
Okay. Council member items and reports. Counselor King?
In the spirit of the season, I will pass.
Okay. Vice Mayor Adderhall?
I will do the same.
Okay. Counselor Woodson?
I'm sorry. I just,
That doesn't mean you're not in the season.
spirit?
not quite. I'm getting there. So this is just a question, and I know that Andy and Frankie and I have talked about it, but the whole New Year's celebration sounds fantastic at Times Square, and I know we talked about getting some of those lots. I mean, a lot of the people who own property there, they have done their best. They have cleaned up. It looks great, but there are some that are not doing anything. Where are we on that?
Ironically, working with Terry, he has secured permission from the other property owners that are closest to the pier. We have chain link fence going up this week. And so that whole property should be all under lock and key to alleviate any problem there.
See, that was easy. Thank you.
Well, just to piggyback on that, has there been any discussion to take it further and actually have that removed? I've heard that you may have to get an FDE permit to be able to remove that concrete now that the free debris cleanup
I
time
believe
period
right
is
after
ended?
the holidays, Terry had expressed some interest in getting the property owners together, either on a Zoom or whatever, and have those discussions
Okay.
to get
As long
that
as-
path forward. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all right. Sorry, I didn't mean to tread on your.
No, that's fine. Now I'm more in the spirit. How about that?
All right, there you go. Anything else?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Counselor Veach?
Yeah, a couple things. One thing that came to my mind while I was looking at somebody's proposal is that when people get a certain height they can build to, whether it's their by right or by exception, that we tend to get this uniform roof line. And I just have a question for Sarah. Have you ever seen where somebody has like a height requirement for these commercial buildings where they allow it to be more like an average height, where maybe they could have one section of floor higher if they made another section of floor lower? It would just seem to me that that would offer some aesthetic tools to developers that I hate to see the island become this uniform haircut.
So we don't have anything in the code that would encourage that sort of design. Mainly the issue is that everybody's been very interested in having fairly low heights. So whenever anybody's building, they want to build to the maximum height. So it seems like something like that would probably make the most sense as potentially a CPD when somebody comes in and they want to ask for more height and they're doing something kind of different, and that the council would recommend sort of different heights of different buildings. I think the hard part about implementing that is if it's multiple property owners, you're giving more right to one person than another if you're not letting everybody build to the maximum allowed height. So I like the idea and concept. It would be implementation. I'm not sure how we would do that because everybody wants the most they can get. But I understand what you're saying. It would look nice to have different heights.
Yes, and especially if there's no more square footage per se packed into it.
Mhm.
And within, I understand what you're saying, because I was thinking about, you say that it's actually an average height, and someone might take a parking garage and kind of calculate that into their average and build a tower. But if something very tightly bracketed, where you said that you could allow a certain square footage, one floor above, in turn for a certain square footage with the floor removed. I don't know, it's just a thought counts to try to make lots being rebuilt on the island. If that'd just be kind of nice to maybe allow a little variety without, giving away the farm. Now, back to some of the things that Eddie Rude brought up. The sand spurs, certainly I've seen lots of different ways. I've sat through, I've talked to FWC. Murph had extensive talks with them a couple of years ago, and using like super saline water was one tool, using the kind of the vinegar, but both of those, and glyphosate, which is Roundup, which has a lot of problems in a marine environment because it affects the growth of larvae in the water if it gets into the marine environment. And pretty much on our sandy little barrier island, we're entirely in a marine kind of a marine environment. They did have another herbicide which FWC approved. I agreed to let it be used. In Murph, I brought it to council and recommended it. The Chad wasn't as enthusiastic, should we say, about it because of it still is a chemical you're putting on the land. We've also been out there and had dozens of volunteers pulling out sand spurs, which is not a really fun activity for anybody. I've hauled away pickup truck loads of it. And the point is that when you rake it in, you're essentially planting the sand spurs. And so they come back and you're breaking them off so they're in the sand. So I think, I'd certainly be willing to, if FWC hasn't come forward asking for the spraying this season, but if they do, I think then that's a time for council to consider it. I congratulate getting rid of Australian pines. As far as the rename of the critical wildlife area, I know that one problem that comes up with trying to rename things is that you're picking one name over others. And sometimes people get a little persnickety because, like you already mentioned, we have Mulholland, we have Hughes. They're both characters in the formation of our island. But if you name it with one, are you snubbing the other? And the Little Estero Island critical wildlife area has a lot of history because probably 30 years ago, it was an island. There was a lagoon there, and there was actually a separate island, and that's where that name came from. It was called Little Estero Island. If you look at postcard like from the 80s, you'll see those out there. So that's just to answer some of the things that Eddie Rude was saying. I don't see any particular. I don't necessarily agree with changing the name of the critical wildlife area. I think that it's got a history, and I think that FWC, I assume, will come forward if they want to do spraying down there. But I haven't heard of them coming forward. Why that?
I just want to kind of piggyback on that because there's I appreciate you taking this on and giving this information. And this maybe is more directed towards you, Nancy, as a question. He said that he went to Murph to kind of go through that process and he was removed from the agenda. So was it an agenda item or was it public comment? I guess I have a problem with if a resident is going to speak at one of our advisory committees and is not allowed to speak, especially on something that pertains to the island. How does that happen?
Well, to clarify, Mayor, he was on the agenda and the committee removed him from the agenda, but he was allowed to speak during public comment. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I didn't get to see that meeting yet, so I'm just curious as to why it was removed, why this discussion was removed from the Murph.
Because having watched it, my understanding was the committee felt like they weren't included in setting, they had set an agenda and this was placed upon them, was what I got out of it.
Yes, and so my understanding too is the committee was not consulted about this being placed in the agenda. And in the approval of the final agenda, just like we do, the committee has the right to make an adjustment to the agenda. At that point, they did, but they did not invite him and then uninvite him. He was placed there by staff without consultation with the committee.
So I guess I'm still confused. I think to me, this seems like something that should go through the Murph committee to discuss, to make recommendations to the council, and for it to not be heard in front of the committee that is there to give the recommendation to council based on everything he talked about, to me doesn't make sense. And we don't always like things that are in the agenda, but that doesn't mean you just don't get them on there because staff feels they're important. They have the right, don't they, Nancy, to put things on the agenda as well, whether you like
They
what the topic is or
do,
not?
but one option would be for town council to direct that they review this now at their next meeting.
Well, I think that's, unless I'm mistaken, I think that's the process. That's the whole point of having an advisory committee. And this advisory committee meets specifically about environmental issues, not specifically, but that is one of their tasks. And this is an environmental issue. I would be in favor of having them hear what he has to say, let them discuss it and make the recommendation to council.
No, I didn't watch the meeting. Of course, I was doing the mandatory ethics training, which overlapped with the two meetings I had
think
that
all
day.
of us were. I was in the
Yeah.
one.
But I think now my thought was that they're going to, instead of having Eddie Reed talk, they were going to discuss what he wanted to talk about and see about putting it on an agenda as a council. But the town council has the right. I mean, the town council, in every one of our advisory committees, there's a clause in there about a business they'll do and any tasks assigned by town council.
Okay, well then I guess I would be in favor of assigning this task to the Murph committee to hear the discussion and to make a recommendation to council.
And you could also, because you made 3 points, you could also break those 3 points up and have those put on the agenda for Murph to discuss.
I think all three of them have validity to be discussed by Murph and hear from the public, both at the committee level and at the council level.
Then just to clarify, the direction would be to ask staff to put the Sandspur management, the Australian pine eradication, and the renaming of the critical wildlife area on a future agenda.
That's what I would support.
Okay.
I would say on the next agenda, because we are moving into bird nesting season sooner than later. And, these are issues that are critical to that as well. So, or at least two of them are.
And I would say yes, but the next available agenda, I think if you have more than 2 weeks, so I think it could go on January.
Is there consensus to?
I did watch the hearing as well, and I think the at least the stated concern was there wasn't enough time to have this new item placed on the agenda. Having said that, the point is that that item was time sensitive, so therefore it needed to be heard. So I would certainly support putting it on the next agenda.
Okay. What else you got, Bill?
Okay. The last thing is, and I know that we've been going through a lot with the ethics training and all that, and I don't know if all of you guys went through the Form 6 webinar. And I'll tell you that this has been giving me a great deal of stress and thought. I'm seriously concerned about the invasion of privacy with Form 6. It is just so intrusive. I think that it could open up people to, when you give a bank and you give what money you have in that bank, it seems to me like an invitation to a hacker or somebody to go through and try to manipulate. And I think too that this revealing your personal assets is like an invitation to a burglar on where to go. And with that said, I am strongly leaning towards resigning from council before the January 1st date for this. Because if you're on council on January 1st, then you have to file the Form 6. And if you don't file the Form 6, then there's daily fines. I'm not comfortable with going forward with the idea that I would not be filing it and just letting the fines accrue. And I'm just not very comfortable with exposing my financial information and that of my family to the public. I know that the idea with the Form 6 and with the fact that, if Form 6 just went to the authorities, honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I file my taxes. That's all very personal information. But they make this public, and the reason why they think they want the public to be an agency to go through and look for possible corruption. But that assumes that everyone who can look at these forms is going to be a good actor. And I just don't think that's the case. So I'm leaning heavily towards resigning. This may be my last town council meeting.
I respect what you have to say, and I know, looking at the news last week, that a Naples council person is also resigning because of that.
And I don't know that there's, I don't know if there's anything that we can do. Is there, Nancy? This is a state mandated.
It is a state mandated. And, there are a number of other local officials on the East Coast that have also discussed resigning. I think we had someone from either Daytona Beach Shores or Daytona Beach, the other little small city, I forgot the name of it, that have also set forth their resignation.
And I've Googled some things too. There's a lot of, particularly the small municipalities, because I think there's kind of an understanding that, we're a small town. Everybody knows everybody's business to some degree. The Coconut Telegraph works very well on our little island. And that's a huge concern for me. And it's not by any means an easy decision. It has nothing to do with the politics of the council, the make of the council, the staff. This is really a very personal thing about what I feel is an exposure to a risk that I'm not comfortable dictating that my wife and my family takes.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, but I certainly respect your decision, whatever it is that you decide. Sounds like you've kind of made up your mind, but not really quite yet. So I guess where do we go from here, Nancy? Do we, until he makes a final decision, do we?
Correct. We would have to know what the effective date would be. And then at that point, council would have to recognize that he has resigned, and we would set forth an advertisement to fill the vacancy. And your charter does have some provisions in it that talks about filling the vacancy. It will be filled by appointment by a majority vote of the council members remaining. And that appointment would be effective until a successor is chosen at the next election. The advertisement, we would provide information in there regarding Form 6 so that we don't have someone apply, get appointed, and then all of a sudden realize that they have to deal with the Form 6. What I also wanted to state was the other city was South Daytona that I was thinking of, but the response from the state legislators, there was one that was quoted in the newspaper. He basically said, well, the state elected officials, they have to file a Form 6. County commissioners have to file a Form 6. So municipalities, villages, towns, they should file a Form 6 as well. Not that that makes it any better, but that's just the response.
So if Councilor Veach is not prepared to make that final decision today, would we then have to call a special meeting before the first of the year if he makes, or?
Well, it could remain vacant until your next meeting. At that point, you could recognize his resignation and then put the advertisement out. You know, we want to bring that to you. I don't think it would be appropriate at the staff level to do that. In the alternative, should you want to call a special meeting, you could do that as well. That would just facilitate getting that advertisement out a little bit quick.
And I think as long as you have a quorum,
Yeah.
business goes on.
Okay.
So does the Form 6 itself have to be filed before December 31st?
No.
Or, no, so
No.
it's just a matter of being on the council on January 1.
Correct.
I think it's due when, July, Nancy, and then the
Yes.
fines start in September if it's not completed?
Correct. So there is no fine. It is the obligation, the requirement to file it electronically.
Okay, well, Bill, whenever you make a decision, I'm sure we'll hear about it. And then if you make the decision, then
You can call a
We'll call a
special
spe-
meeting,
okay.
or you can wait till your next.
okay.
Yeah, and this is not, there's been other people who've resigned, and I think they just, the next meeting, you put an advertisement out, and then you, just like selecting the attorney or the town
Right.
manager.
Okay, does you have anything else?
I think that's enough.
Well, I have just a couple of quick things. One, as was alluded to earlier, this will be the last meeting at Diamond Head for the town council. We certainly appreciate all of the hospitality Sunstream has given us, as well as Neil Hopgood, the GM, and his staff for really welcoming us and making town government still work in the face of a disaster. So thank you to them. We'll get out, I would assume, Frankie, as soon as possible, where we're going to have the next meeting, which is, I don't know, what day is it? January
January
11th?
8th.
January 8th. So as soon as we know, we'll get it out there to the public. And then the last thing, the CAC, the Citizen Advisory Committee, is looking for a citizen to step into the role to represent the town of Fort Myers Beach. Tom Gressman was that person. As of right now, we do not have anyone from the community willing or that has stepped up to fill that role to be the voice for Fort Myers Beach. So anyone out there that would like to be involved or inquire a little bit more about it, if they could reach out to Amy Baker, our town clerk, and she can help you get to where you need to go. It's just in case you don't know, it's for the MPO meetings. So reach out to Amy if you're interested. It's a beneficial thing for the town for someone to be there to represent us. So if you can do it, that would be helpful. Is there anything else? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
This mostly jolly fat man says Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Ho, 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 it's time to go. Move to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn by the jolly man to my right. Mr. King, is there a second?
I'll second, but I just can't follow that up.
Oh, come on,
Yeah,
Bill.
right.
Come on.
Got a motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.